we present Kenneth Williams, Derek Nimmo, Clement Freud, and Sheila Hancock in Just a Minute. And as the minute waltz fades away, here to tell you about it is our chairman, Nicholas Parsons.
Thank you very much, and welcome once again to Just a Minute. And as you've just heard, we are delighted in this particular show to welcome back the one and only Sheila Hancock.
Here.
With great courage and determination, she has returned to do battle against these three extraordinary, exceptional, extroverts and extravagant players of Just a Minute. And once more, I'm going to ask them all to speak, if they can, for just a minute on some unlikely subject, without hesitation, without repetition, and without deviating from the subject. And according to how well they do this, they will gain points, or their opponents will gain points. And let us begin the show this week with the lovely Sheila Hancock. Sheila, can you talk to us about modern art for 60 seconds, starting now?
I knew this fella called Art, and he was extremely modern. He was, in fact, a hippie, and his ways were extremely up-to-date in every sense of the word. He had long hair, he wore a kaftan, he had attitudes towards work that were, if not revolutionary, then new. He also enjoyed pictures, which is another meaning of the word modern art. Now, this is something that I don't like to pass comment on, because in previous generations, art that was considered modern was always spurned and mocked, and later it was acclaimed as a masterpiece, so I wouldn't venture to pass an opinion now.
Kenneth Williams has challenged. Why?
Well, deviation, if you don't want to pass an opinion, why don't you shut up?
Because, Kenneth, whether she wishes to pass an opinion or not, in this game she has to keep going for 60 seconds, irrespective of... so I disagree with your challenge, and Sheila therefore gains a point, and there are 23 seconds for you, Sheila, to continue with modern art, starting now.
Several weeks ago, I went to the Tate Gallery to see an exhibition with a very intellectual friend of mine, and I was very wary about...
Derek Nimmo, why have you challenged?
Repetition of French. You had a friend called Art.
That's right, she did, right?
It was a different friend, it was a different friend.
It might have been a different friend, but it was a repetition of the word friend.
Oh.
So, on this occasion, I agree with Derek Nimmo. Repetition, Derek gains a point. He takes over the subject. 15 seconds left. Modern art, starting now.
Francis Bacon is probably my favourite modern artist. I particularly like those lovely series of pictures he did about the Pope. And some of the ones which show the carcasses of meat torn open in the retrospective exhibition.
Sheila Hancock, you've challenged her.
Hesitation.
Yes, he was going so fast he tripped over himself, but that is a hesitation. So, Sheila, you'll gain another point, and there are 4 seconds left for you to continue yet again with modern art, starting now.
In this gallery was a rope.
Clement Freud is challenged. Why? Repetition of gallery. Yes, you went to the Tate Gallery before. So you say gallery.
He's up to his old tricks.
Yes, well, he's got it down to a fine art, but it was a legitimate challenge, so...
Not very modern, though.
Clement Freud, you gain a point, and you take over the subject with 2 seconds to go. Modern art, starting now.
A puce lemon suspended from
That whistle, by the way, tells us that 60 seconds is up, and whoever is speaking at that moment gains an extra point. On this occasion was Clement Freud, so he's now in the lead, equal with Sheila Hancock at the end of that round. Derek Nimmo, will you begin the next round? The subject is combinations. I think you brought them in more than once in the series of Just a Minute, but will you talk about them now for 60 seconds, starting now?
I like combinations, really. It's a very nice word. It can be used in all sorts of ways, really, particularly relating to other letters of the alphabet. If you jumble them all together, I think it's terribly interesting. Also, of course, if you are a locksmith, it's terribly important to know the right combination, because if you think it's A, B, C, D, E, and in fact it is L, M, N, O, P, Q, you're not going to get anywhere at all, are you? I mean, that's quite obvious. If you think about it. And then there are the wooden ones, which that chairman fellow was talking about a moment ago. Well, there you cover yourself all in them. They're a one-piece gown, very nice to wear, particularly on chilly mornings. I remember going to see A. Matthews just before he died, and he was sitting in his garden wearing combinations which fastened with a safety pin here and his deerstalker hat on. And he's very old, nearly 90 years. And he picked my daughter up in his arms, and he looked at her and he said, "I'm not going to see you when you grow older, my dear." And tears came into his eyes. And I think that was the most wonderful, moving moment, because
Sheila Hancock, you challenge. Why?
Deviation, I agree it's a moving moment, but I don't honestly see it's anything to do with his combinations.
I quite agree, Sheila. He had got the audience completely hoodwinked by this beautiful but sentimental story. And so you had the courage to challenge, and therefore I agree with the challenge. It's got nothing to do with his combinations. It is 4.5 seconds for you, Sheila, to continue with combinations starting now.
When I was little, I wore either Liberty bodices or combinations, but there were certain...
On this occasion, Sheila Hancock was speaking when the whistle went, so she gains that extra point. In fact, she was the only one to score in that round, so she now has a lead of 2 over Clement Freud and everybody else at the end of that.
They must be tired. They must be waning, mustn't they?
Yes. They've been intimidated by a really good player of the game, Sheila Hancock. Clement Freud, it is your turn to begin. Dick Turpin. Can you talk to us about Dick Turpin, Clement, for 60 seconds, starting now?
It would be an absurd understatement to say that Dick Turpin was a horseman who enjoyed riding at night. He was, in fact, a highwayman of the most callous and vicious nature who held up women and children, and many thought that he robbed the rich to give to the poor, which is quite untrue, because that's the sort of thing Kenneth Williams did.
Kenneth Williams, why do you...
I'm not going to sit here and listen to a load of maligning. So, maligning me. I've done nothing of the kind. I've not robbed anybody, have I?
No, you've never robbed the rich to give to the poor.
No.
I quite agree. I'm sure you haven't, and I take your word for that.
Deviation.
So, deviation, I give you a point, and there are 34 seconds left for Dick Turpin, starting now.
Well, he rode up to these coaches, you see, which was full of rich people, and...
Clement Freud has challenged you.
Deviation.
Why?
The coaches was full.
A deviation...
It may be a dirty show, but I like clean grammar.
Well, I maintain that in a show like this, we have to keep going under such difficult obstacles and the stress and the strain of 3 people trying to challenge you. You might not always use very good grammar, and therefore I'm not going to allow it and say that Kenneth has another point, and there are 29 seconds left for Dick Turpin. Kenneth, starting now.
And he said, money or your life, you see. Well, a lot of them came out of the coach and gave...
Clement Freud has challenged you again.
Coach.
That's right, we've had the coach before. So, Clement, that was correct, a repetition. And there are 24 seconds for you, Clement, to continue with Dick Turpin, starting now.
He had a horse which was black, called Huntercombe, although many people referred to it as Black Bess.
Derek Nimmo has challenged
Addition
you.
of black.
You did say black twice, so Derek gets a
Once
point.
in small b,
Yes.
Black Bess is the name of the animal.
Really, well done. Well done. Well done.
That applies to my Tate gallery and my gallery.
Yes, of course it does.
my darling. Of
And it
course, you see,
applies
you
to
can go
so
on
many things, and we can go on forever. I'm
I'm
sure all the audience could bring examples of such things up to
I
us, but
mean,
we
we
don't
could
wish
invoke
them.
canonical law.
So, Derek has a point, and there are 16 seconds left for Dick Turpin, Derek, starting now.
Dick Turpin had a friend who was also a Dick Shepherd. They have been moulded into 2 most beautiful Staffordshire figures, and I have a pair of them at home, which I treasure very greatly. One looks to the left, the other...
Kenneth Williams has challenged.
Deviation, we're no longer discussing Dick Turpin, we're discussing statues.
Yes, but you did establish, you know, that he has 2 statue figures made in the likeness of Dick Turpin. Isn't that not right?
Yes, absolutely
Exactly.
right.
So I'm afraid I can't allow it. So Derek has another point, and there are 4 seconds
But
left.
no, wait a minute, the subject is Dick Turpin, not statues of Dick Turpin.
We are not going to get into a discussion or argument about that. Derek has a point, and there are 4 seconds left, starting now.
And when he rode down from York, he came to a tremendous league, and everybody said, "What ho! Hooray! I'm very
That's one way, if there's only 4 seconds to go, to make sure you don't get challenged in the last 4 seconds, isn't it? So anyway, after that round, Dick Turpin has taken Derek into the lead. He's now leading Sheila Hancock and Kenneth Williams by 2, and Clement is trailing them by 1. Sheila Hancock, it's your turn to begin. Politics. There are so many of them, and we get plenty of them in this show and of one nature. But will you talk on the subject for 60 seconds, starting now?
Somebody said to me the other day that I was apolitical, and I considered that was a great compliment. I used to be very politically deeply committed, but as time has grown on and technical age has advanced, I have decided that politics perhaps doesn't have the answer to all our problems. We have two parties of opposite ends. One takes care of the rich and one takes care of the poor.
Kenneth Williams is challenged.
Deviation, nothing of the kind.
Well,
I mean, this is an attempt to drive a rift right down the middle of this country. I'm not to stand idly by and hear this kind of awful propaganda put out by a young woman who's too young, incidentally, to know her own mind.
You've said quite enough. You've said quite enough. I mean, you're going off about politics yourself. Now, save it for the subject because you've got it, because I heartily agree that one party is not looking after the rich and the other after the poor.
Do you want me to give you evidence?
I can give you evidence of both sides who look after the rich, both on the left and the right, and both on the right and the left who sometimes look after the poor.
In actual fact, I did say I was apolitical because that's what I used to believe.
But you definitely established that one of our major parties looks after the poor and the other one only looks after the rich, which I would say is untrue. They have a bias one with the other, but they don't entirely side with one or the other. Kenneth, I agree with you. You gain a point, and there are 40 seconds for politics starting now.
Well, of course, we have a wonderful system in this country which has been largely vouchsafed to us by the efforts of that dreadful man, Oliver Cromwell. Because the facts are he was, in essence, a parliamentarian. It is a bitter tragedy.
Clemens Roy, why do you challenge? Yes, he very cleverly changed from one word to another in midstream. He did not exactly hesitate.
No.
He was teetering,
That's
but he
right.
didn't quite establish. So I'm with Kenneth. He gains another point as I disagree with the challenge. And there are 18 seconds left. Politics starting now.
The only sadness is in that he had so painfully to dispose of that wonderful man, the martyr, Charles, who on the scaffold said to the bishop, Jackson it was,
Derek Nimmo, why do you challenge?
Deviation. We're not talking about politics, we're talking about regicide. Quite a different thing.
No, this is definitely
not
politics.
Part of
I can't
development,
think
dear
of
boy.
of
It's
Charles
an
I
essential
has
part
to-
of the development.
And now,
of our
Kenneth, I'm on your side, so
Not
keep quiet a second.
really.
I can't think of a more powerful political situation than Oliver Cromwell, who decided
We're not-
and managed to...
Charles I on the scaffold.
Charles I on the scaffold, the King of England being beheaded, which was organized by Cromwell and his parliamentarians. What more political situation, what more dynamically political situation could you have in this
Oh,
country?
Lord, this is turning into a history lesson, isn't it?
Well, all right. Kenneth, you have a point, and there are 4 seconds left for politics starting now.
And of course, with the...
Clement Freud is challenged.
He said, and of course, twice before.
Well, you have actually said "and of course." If you'd only said it once before, I wouldn't
what
have
a
allowed it.
shame.
But you have on this occasion said
Oh,
twice. So,
yes.
Clement, this time you gain a point, and there are 2 seconds left for politics starting now.
The Liberals are very sadly underrated.
Rather sad that with 2 seconds to go, Clement could only mention the Liberals in 2 seconds, which is a
I
rather
would have
sad.
spoken about them for a minute.
I'm sure you
I
would
know.
have done those eloquently, my dear.
I say it's sad there was only 2 seconds left for you to do it, and I hope people don't take that as a comment on their potency in politics.
Oh, listen!
There we are. Kenneth Williams, you have leapt into the lead.
Oh, I love...
Derek Nimmo, will you begin the next round? The subject is drakes.
Who?
Drakes, that's all that's on the card.
Sorry, Drake.
You obviously want a moment to think
No,
about it. There's
something
many
to drink,
interpretations, which you always love. So Derek Nimmo, Drakes, 60 seconds starting now.
This is a splendid surname in this country. We are proud of the many Drakes who have gone out and done such wonderful things for this country. And when the drum belonging to the
Clement
Drake...
Freud's challenge.
Repetition of country.
There was a repetition of country, I'm afraid.
Absolutely
So,
right. Good old Clay. As he listens, you've got to give it to him. He listens, doesn't he?
when they think they can't bluff or persuade or bully their way out of it, they become magnanimous and say, oh, well done. Of course. There was no doubt about it. Clement Freud, you gain a point, and there are 49 seconds for Drakes starting now.
The Liberal Party has a very interesting problem about drakes. They don't mind particularly about ducks, and they're prepared to leave signets to the other two.
Derek Nimmo's challenge, why?
Deviation. I've never heard a more illiberal statement. They don't care about the ducks, they only care about the drakes. I am a paid-up member of the Liberal Party, and this is not our party.
This is not a place for
Right,
propaganda.
is wrong with the female of the species? That's what I want to know. What's wrong with
Here,
that?
here,
Why
here,
don't they
here.
care? If it's a liberal
wanna
party,
shut
they
your
don't care
round,
about the
mate.
Drakes
You wanna shut
and the
your
Drakes. That all makes general politics.
Oh, it's a disgrace.
Right, quiet. Now, Sheila, would you like to say something
I
about
totally
Drake?
agree. I totally agree. What's wrong with the ducks?
Nothing's wrong with the ducks, but Clement Freud...
Mind you, if they're rich
Said the
ducks,
Liberal
the
Party.
Tories will
I
look
can
after them. If they're poor ducks, the
All politicians and all parties are sitting ducks on occasion.
Load of rubbish, the whole lot of them.
And all I can say, in trying to be fair, which I always try very hard to do, is this. You can go in this particular game on any subject, as long as it makes sense and is not technically deviating from the subject, which is Drake's. You can go in your fantasy or imagination or on fact. And Clement wasn't
Can we
technically
hold you to
deviating. You can hold me to it.
Right, thank you.
And there are 39 seconds for Clement to continue with Drake's, starting now.
Many Devonshire-born members of the family of this famous navigator who now play bowls in Plymouth, Devonshire.
Clement and his wife who challenged.
Who now play bowls. Drake can't possibly play bowls now, he's dead.
He did say the descendants, didn't he, or something?
What?
He did say the descendants.
Members of the
Well,
family.
the
Mem-
Friends
members of
don't
the
play
family.
bowls.
They do.
People do play bowls still, and I can well believe there are some
They can't
descendants.
do on that green there, he said they did.
He didn't say it was on that particular green. I disagree with the challenge, Kenneth. I'm very sorry. He wasn't deviating from Drake's. And there are 31 seconds left for the subject, starting now.
This is the name of a bakehouse in California.
Derek Nimmer's challenge.
Revision
What?
of name.
Yes, you had the name of Drake's before. Name is quite correct. Derek, you gain the subject and a point, of course. 28 seconds left. Drake's starting now.
Oh, the lovely beginning of the wind and the willows, when you all those lovely birds.
Clement Freud, why have you challenged?
Repetition of lovely.
Yes, I'm afraid.
Well done, Clay. Well.
19 seconds for you on Drake's, Clement, starting now.
Edward Lear spoke eloquently on this subject when he mentioned drakes in the wind and ducks on the pond. Villages.
Derek Nimmer's challenge.
Repetition
What?
of ducks.
Yes, we had ducks
duck.
before.
Okay.
No, it's enough. It's
Well
enough.
done,
Well
Derek
done.
Well listened.
Well done. Derek Nimmer has another point of 14 seconds for Drake's. Derek starting now.
Henry King is one of the greater living exponents.
Clement Freud, you've challenged.
Hesitation.
Yes, it's pretty borderline, wasn't it? He caught his breath, but I suppose it was a hesitation. I think it's only fair. I will put this to the audience because it's so difficult to judge and
Oh,
really
give
be
it to
fair.
him, give it
No,
to
I'm
him.
not going to give it to
Give
him.
it
I'm
to
going to let the audience decide. If you think there was hesitation, will you cheer? And if you don't think it was, will you boo? Will you all do it together now? They don't think it was hesitation.
They never think anything. They always boo.
No, they don't.
They
They
usually
don't.
cheer. So Derek Nimmer gains a point and he keeps the subject, and there are 11 seconds for Drake's. Derek starting now.
Another use of the term is the one you...
Kenneth Williams.
Hesitation.
I agree on the hesitation that time, there was no doubt. Kenneth, you gain a point, and there are 8 seconds for Drake's starting now.
Well, of course, one of the things they do determine on very early is that the young webbed feet.
Well, at the end of that round, we have a very interesting situation. The 3 men are equal in the lead, and Sheila is trailing just a little, which is sad, but I'm sure it will not be for long. Kenneth, your turn to begin. Knowing my onions. Can you talk to us about that subject for 60 seconds, starting now?
Well, there is a song in which the lyric says, I'll raise a bunion on his Spanish onion if I catch him bending tonight. I think probably that does sum up my attitude to onions. The phrase has come largely to mean knowing what you are about apropos style and technique. And this can be said to be the accomplishment of something so finely done that everyone says, how beautifully executed, with what incredible panache! I've never seen such elan as this. He knows his onions. There are no flies on him, even if you can see where they've been. But how wonderful it is to be able to see someone so...
Well,
Kenneth, not
Let's
only...
put me in the lead, and
Yes,
it's...
you
can.
Wait a minute, Kenneth. They're going to put you further in lead because I think that Kenneth started with the subject and finished with it, so therefore he gets an extra bonus point, doesn't he?
Oh, God.
Yes. Clement, your turn to begin. The subject, oh, what a lovely one for you. How I grew my beard. It seems to have thrown you back on your heels, as they say, but will you talk to us about it for 60 seconds, starting now?
I would like to talk to you for 60 seconds on the subject of how I grew my beard, which was accomplished by ceasing to shave, or to put it another way, failing to use my razor. Some of you may have it that I suspended all activities with knives and scissors, and those would...
Sheila Hancock, why have you challenged?
Deviation, all this activity with knives and scissors, and
Yes.
anyway, I've never suspected.
Yes,
that
I'm
you-
sure you could never use a knife and a shave. Knives and scissors to shave with. You had established in our minds, Clement, that you were shaving. And now you've gone on to talk about shaving and the connection with knives and scissors, so I consider that deviation. And Sheila has the subject, and there are 37 seconds left. For you, Sheila, how... Starting now.
This I consider to be
Clement
a case...
Freud, you've challenged. Sheila has another point because Clement challenged too. He's taken it back. So there we are. The 37 seconds, Sheila, for you. How I grew my beard, starting now.
It's a case of gross discrimination against women that this subject should have been chosen. It's very obvious that I find it difficult to talk about it. However, I can. When I was very young, I played the part of Dopey in Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs at school. Whereupon, of course, I had to grow a beard. I did my best. I put Vaseline on my chin, liquid paraffin, everything that I'd read in women's magazines would grow beards. However, eventually I resorted to taking a pad of cotton wool and a...
Derek Nimmer, you've challenged. Why?
Deviation. She's not grown a beard.
I can't. It's not fair.
If you
Well,
had
there
a
were. What about the
deviation...
lady in the
Just
circus?
said deviation.
Well, it's not
She
me.
didn't know.
I was never in a
She gets
circus.
cotton wool
But you
sticking
get
on.
bearded lady.
She hasn't yet told us what she did with the cotton wool.
Yes, you don't know
No,
what
she
grew
said she
under.
took a pad of cotton
Right.
wool. So, Sheila has another point, and there are 6 seconds left. How I grew my beard, Sheila, starting now.
On the cotton wool, I put some...
Derek Nimmer, why have you
Repetition of
challenged?
cotton wool.
yes.
Oh, you are
Now
He's
you'll
most
never
un-
know.
Yes, most ungallant. That's a
He's
rotten
most
getting in there.
ungallant.
Fancy a girl. I mean, what other girl would have such courage and determination and ability to keep going on? How she grew her beard.
Rotten sport.
So, Derek, you've got the subject. How I grew my beard, starting now.
I went to bed for 3.5 months.
Sheila Hancock, why have you challenged?
Deviation. Going to bed and growing a beard.
Yes.
It suggests some sort of deviation, doesn't it?
It definitely does.
I mean, to be in bed long enough to grow a beard.
2 seconds for you, Sheila, on how I grew my beard, starting now.
I placed my...
Clement Freud challenge.
Hesitation.
No. 1.5 seconds for how I
he
grew my
waits
beard.
until I'm on my last lap, doesn't
Yes.
he?
Well, how I grew my beard, Sheila, 1.5 seconds, starting now.
Hand on my
Derek
chin.
Nemo challenge.
Hesitation, of course.
No. 1 second for how I grew my beard, Sheila, starting now.
Putting on... I think
Well,
that
I'm
shows great talent to talk for all that time on growing a beard.
I think it shows great time, but I can't give you a bonus point because they almost gave them to you instead. But anyway, at the end of that round, I'm afraid it's also the end of the show, so it's up to me now to give you the final score. And a very interesting result. It really was almost equal with all four. But just in fourth place was Clement Freud, 1 point behind Derek Nimmo, who was only 1 point behind our joint winners, Sheila Hancock and Kenneth Williams.
Joyful day. Joyful day.
You might almost say that it was a sort of... Kenneth might almost have won because I think they were going a little bit overboard with those points that Sheila got at the end, and the audience obviously gave her a little bit of assistance. But she is a winner that we love to have because she doesn't play it so often, so the score is equal winners. Congratulations. And it only remains for me to say to you all now, thank you very much for listening, thank our audience for coming to enjoy the show, and from all of us here, goodbye.
chairman of Just a Minute was Nicholas Parsons. The program was devised by Ian Messiter and produced by Simon Brett. We present Kenneth Williams, Derek Nimmo, Clement Freud, and Sheila Hancock in Just a Minute. And as the minute waltz fades away, here to tell you about it is our chairman, Nicholas Parsons.
Thank you very much indeed, and welcome once again to Just a Minute. And once again, the rules are as before. I'm going to ask each one of them to speak, if they can, on some subject without hesitation, without repetition, and without deviating from the subject. And according to how well they do it, they will gain points, or points will be gained by their opponents. Kenneth, it's your turn to begin.
Thank
The
goodness.
subject is the snags of show business. I don't know. I'm sure you can tell us very amusing and entertaining snags of show business, but 60 seconds will do, starting now.
Well, one of the most obvious that comes to mind is, of course, the occasion when the actor becomes unaware through some fault or other of what the lines are supposed to be. And Siobhan McKenna told me about an over-enthusiastic girl in the prompt corner, perched on a very high stool, who, instead of giving the correct line, just became awfully solicitous and said, "Oh, you've gone terribly wrong, darling. You should never have done that with a bishop anyway." And she fell forward on the stool.
Clement Freud, I'm afraid, has challenged you.
Well, he's an idiot. It's a lovely anecdote. Isn't it? I mean, that's really raconteurism at its best.
I know. So, Clement Freud, what was your challenge?
Repetition of never.
What?
You should never have done
Yes,
it.
I have to give it to you, and there are 27 seconds left for the snags of show business, starting now.
So she fell forward off her stool into the prompt corner.
Kenneth Williams, why do you challenge?
This is simply a repetition of what I've just said.
Well, it may be, and it may not be. You see,
It jolly well is, and you know it.
I know, Kenneth. I
They know it here, those people all know it.
Kenneth, I know very well that he's trying to rile you.
Yes,
and
taking
he's
words out of my mouth, and he don't know where they've been.
trying to get you going so that you will challenge as exactly as you did then, and he will gain points. Don't be intimidated. Don't play into his hands like that. You knew he would unsettle or unseat you, as we usually say to you, and the result was that you played and challenged right away. And I've got to be accurate, I've got to be fair, and say that I'm afraid he gains another point, and there are 24 seconds left for the snags of show business, Clement, starting now.
And this precipitous decline from the seat upon which she was sitting is one of the snags of show business. There are many others, like being in a radio show with Kenneth Williams, who has his right hand on the buzzer and waves his finger across my face in a...
She and Derek Nimmo, wife who challenge.
Deviation. I don't think it's a snag being in the show with Kenneth Williams. I think it's a...
Of course, again, I have to be so difficult because I have to be fair. I agree with Derek's challenge. It is not a snag to be in the show with Kenneth Williams. It is an honor. Derek, you gain the point and you take the subject. 8 seconds left. The snags of show business starting now.
I was in a show with a very distinguished lady of the theatre who had a throat microphone down her bundles and a little transmitter in her knickers. What happened was the elastic broke, the pop...
For those of you who may not know, the whistle tells us that 60 seconds is up, and whoever is speaking at that moment gains an extra point. On this occasion, Derek Nimmo was speaking when the whistle went, so he's
I
crept
just
up.
fell in what he was on about.
I want to hear the end of that story.
So some of the audience, if you want to stay after we've recorded the show, audience, we'll tell you the end of that story. I'm glad he didn't have time to finish it tonight. Clement, your turn to begin the next round. The subject is models. You can take that many ways, but will you talk about it for just a minute, starting now?
Models is the plural of model, and people following this profession.
Derek Nimmo, you've challenged.
Well, either he repeated profession or it was deviation because he didn't say the right word.
Either way, I think you're right. Derek, you take over the subject, and there are 55 seconds left for models starting now.
I knew a model called Mary who was tall and black and airy. And every day she went for a walk.
Why?
Because this is disgusting. I mean, you don't talk about people being tall and black and hairy. That's filthy. I don't want to sit here and listen to a load of filth. I thought this was a family show.
It is a family show sometimes. But I'm afraid he wasn't deviating from models. I think it's a very devious-sounding model, I must say, tall and black and hairy.
Well,
but
if she is, of course it is, isn't it? Sounds like she was naked anyway.
I think, to be fair, he
But
hasn't
you should
quite...
give the subject to me. Thank you, yes.
No, I don't think he's got away from the subject of models quite. So I leave it with Derek Nimmo, and there are 45 seconds left, starting now.
What I really love to do is to go down to the round pond on a Sunday afternoon with my lovely model boat. I put it into the water and away it sails across that expanse of liquid until it arrives eventually at the other side. And there I go, pick it up with my own fair hands, tuck it under my arm, and then go to the kite man, and I have a lovely model flying thing like I've just talked to you about. And up it goes, fly and floats away.
Shut
Oh,
up.
shut up. You're flying tonight. and it's-
You strop him with it.
Yes, hesitation, I agree with you, Clement. So you gain a point, and there are 21 seconds left. Models starting now.
If you would care for a Derek Nimmo model, all you do is get an old sack and put a clerical collar around the top. For feet, you use buckled gumboots. And in the way of breeches, what could be better than ecclesiastical sackcloth? Obtained...
Derek Nimmo, you've challenged.
Tradition of
What?
sack.
Yes, we've had the sack that you started with, and now we've had sackcloth.
Well, that's two different words.
It's a hyphenated word, so it is a
Two
sack,
different
isn't
ones.
it?
Can't be accused of
Yeah,
using
new thought of the game. This is a hyphenated word.
Sackcloth, one word.
Sackcloth's one word. You know more than I do. Therefore, it's an incorrect challenge. So Clement has a point, and there are 2 seconds to continue with models.
It's very
starting
nasty
now.
anyway, isn't it?
Yeah.
Hancock on the other model is so very nice.
It is a little nasty, and it's a rather curious fantasy if you want to have a Derek Nimmo model. But as we established last week, you can go in your fantasy or imagination this subject, this game, any way you wish. Sheila Hancock, it's your turn to begin. The worst thing I ever did in my kitchen. Can you tell us about that? In 60 seconds, starting now.
It's difficult for me to talk about this without getting somebody into trouble, because the worst thing I ever did in my kitchen involves the milkman. One day, he came to my door, looking very attractive and sweet in his blue and white overall. I said, "Won't you come in and have a cup of coffee?" Which he very willingly did. And as I was handing him the coffee, he dropped his milk
Clement
bottles.
Freud, why have you challenged?
The coffee.
Oh, we've had more than
Oh,
one.
yes. Now you'll never know what I did with the milkman in the kitchen. So
Perhaps Clement Freud has saved you some embarrassment. He's used to save the milkman, hasn't he? Clement, you gain a point, and there are 36 seconds left. The worst thing I did in my kitchen, starting now.
I put half a pound of toadstools onto the gas cooker, lit the flame beneath it, and added, as requested in the book, 14 ounces of margarine.
Kenneth, why have you challenged?
Because no book would give you such a recipe about toadstools.
right. This is black magic.
It's a clever challenge. They wouldn't actually give a recipe which included toadstools, would
Yeah,
they?
they wouldn't.
So, Kenneth, you gain a point, and your first one, I'm delighted to say, and there are 24 seconds left. The worst thing I ever did in my kitchen, starting now.
Well, I made these lovely cheese straws.
Sheila Hancock's challenge.
Deviation. I've been in Kenneth's kitchen, and I'm absolutely sure he's never made a cheese straw in his life.
Not only is it true, but my mother's here to prove it.
Has he? Has he, Mrs. Williams? Oh, I don't.
Mrs. Williams has saved me the trouble of having to decide. She nodded to us, and Kenneth, you have a point, and there are 19 seconds left for the worst thing I ever did in my kitchen, starting now.
Taking them out of the oven, I noticed the colour was green. Ho, ho!
Clement Freud has challenged you first.
Repetition.
Of ho.
Oh, it doesn't matter. I've got a
No.
Anyway, you see, it turned out that it wasn't flour in the bin at all. It was my father's stomach powder, and that's why they... He's going to ruin all my stories. He ruins everything, doesn't he?
No, you had him on a clever challenge of toadstools. He's got you on ho-ho.
That is true. In effect,
that's
justice
how I
has taken
try
its
to be
course.
fair. I try
Yes,
to
that's
keep
true.
the balance.
That is true.
And it's very difficult sometimes. So, Clement, you have now 14 seconds to continue with the worst thing I ever did in my kitchen, starting now.
Once on a wet September night in the Boltons, I did do the most frightful thing in my kitchen. I forgot to purchase champignons de Paris, which are edible mushrooms, as opposed to the sort of...
Once again, Clement Freud was speaking when the whistle went, so he gains that extra point.
Nick, may I just say on behalf of the milkman that in fact all he did was drop his bottles.
My mind boggles at
Is
the
that
thought of
on
what you
behalf
did
of
to
or
ma-
against the milk?
My mind boggles as to what you did to make him drop
I
his
just
bottles.
handed him his coffee and he dropped them. His bottles.
But normally, if a
Oh,
person...
don't pursue it, Nick.
I'm fascinated, because if you hand a person a cup of coffee, they've got bottles in their hand. If they're composed, they put the bottles on one side. But he looked at Sheila and he dropped his bottles. Well, there we are. Derek, it's your turn to begin. The subject is diving bells. That is what has been thought up for you, and you have 60 seconds to talk about it starting now.
I once a musical comedy called The Belle of New York, which was a jolly show which was first put on in 1884, and there was a lovely song called Down at Narragansett, Girls Have Got a Fizz On, and we used to get onto the stage and stand there with these lovely girls in very long swimming things, and they were diving bells. But of course, in the Mediterranean and even in the Atlantic, you can find gentlemen who put themselves into these great big containers, and down they go right into the water. Goodness knows what they do it for. I've no idea. But when they look through the windows sometimes, and they see little fish going by, and perhaps the odd octopardy, or maybe a wreck. That would be exciting, wouldn't it? Wouldn't it? That would make it very worthwhile going down inside a diving bell, because there you would see through the window King William's
challenge you.
No, I'm sorry. I was so swept up in his story, I pressed it by mistake.
Another point, I'm still going.
Yes, keep going then. All right, 60 seconds. I mean, sorry.
I mean, it can't be 60 seconds still.
No. Wait, was that a mistake, your challenge?
Yes, it was, honestly.
Well, it's bad luck on Dave. He
Mine
doesn't get
wasn't.
any points. And,
Oh, no. Why?
well, you're going to give him a point for an incorrect challenge? I suppose he deserves one because you stopped him
Yes,
going. Yes, all right.
yes.
Flow.
Derek has a point, and no,
in the
we
middle
haven't
of a
got to
great
there
big
yet
flow.
because there are 14 seconds now, Derek. I'm going from Sheila's challenge. 14 seconds left, starting now.
I had a dear friend called Belle O'Shaughnessy, and she was wont to climb onto the top of the diving board and jump down, and she could go into the water. And later, I asked her to believe
Clement Foy, why have you challenged?
Repetition of water.
Absolutely
we've had
right.
water.
My goodness, jolly good.
3 seconds for you with diving bells, Clement, starting
I would
now.
have guessed
If you
with 3
stand on a
seconds.
diving board and project yourself into the...
At the end of that round, Clement Freud has a commanding lead at the end of that round, commanding over Derek, who has a commanding lead over Sheila and Kenneth, who are trailing somewhat. Kenneth, it's your turn to begin, and the subject, another historical one for you, Napoleon. What do you know about the little Corsican? 60 seconds to tell us, starting now.
Well, one of his very great generals, a brilliant engineer, and I would say a very clever strategist too, was Count Bernadotte. And after the disaster at Leipzig, he was approached by a foreign power, the Swedes, and asked to become their king. And he went, it must be said, to Napoleon and said, "How do you feel about this? I don't want to look as though I'm doing a bunk, but it is a rather good offer. I mean, thrones aren't thrown at you every day of the week." And apparently Napoleon said, "It's okay," and he went and did found the dynasty, which we know today as the Swedish royal family. And of course, it was one of those descendants that was killed in the hotel.
very interesting. Ladies and gentlemen of the audience, did you enjoy your little history lesson? Wasn't that fascinating? Yes. And none of us thought you'd take Napoleon off in that particular direction, I must say. I thought it was a bit devious when Napoleon said, okay. I don't think it had been invented then, but still...
Well, he
got
let
away
him go
with
because
it.
he was being offered a kingdom.
Anyway, Kenneth, you have leapt forward, but you're
Thank
still in the
goodness.
same position, I'm afraid.
Oh, right.
Clement is still leading. But you get an extra bonus point because you started with the subject and finished with it and you were not interrupted. Clement Freud, your turn to begin. The subject is home movies. Can you talk to us about them for 60 seconds starting now?
My children think that home movies are large vans which dispatch people's processions.
Kenneth Williams, you challenge.
This is all over the place.
Yes, it was. I agree with your challenge. And there are 54 seconds left for home movies starting now.
The best way to do this is to set up the camera with a time mechanism on it, and then you take all your clothes off and invite your friends to take theirs off as well. And
Derek Nimmer, why have you challenged?
Take off.
Yes, I'm afraid too many people were taking off clothes.
well, it's nice.
They took them off and they took them off. So, Derek, I agree with the challenge, and you take the subject over, and there are 44 seconds for home movies starting now.
One of the snags of Sheridan's are home movies.
Kenneth Williams, why have you challenged?
Deviation, because he's mentioned another subject.
One of
One
the
of the
snags-
snags of show business was a subject in this show.
Yes, I know, but he probably was
Now,
going
you
on.
can't
No,
keep
I
on
am
going
not.
back.
You cannot. He has got to be allowed to establish the connection. He just used one sentence, one of the snags of show business home movies. You can't challenge at that point. We don't know whether it's deviation yet. So I must disagree with the challenge, Kenneth, alas, and say Derek keeps the subject, and there are 42 seconds for home movies starting now.
Awfully jolly 16mm camera, which I go out with and I take snaps of children going through the park.
Kenneth Williams, why do you challenge?
Because you don't take snaps with a movie
That's
camera.
perfectly correct. That's perfectly correct, and the audience obviously agree, and therefore, Kenneth, I agree with your challenge. 36 seconds left. Home movies starting now.
Preferably you should make them blue, and then you can sell them at a vast profit to everyone who says, oh!
Sheila Hancock, why have you challenged?
I think it's deviation, don't you? Selling blue movies?
Well, I don't think home movies, I suppose you show them in the home. It's another interpretation. It's not the way one thinks of it, but alas, he's
The
not...
way I think of it, mate, don't worry.
not technically deviating from the subject on the card, so if Kenneth asked you round any of you to show you his home movies, be prepared and be warned. So, Kenneth, you get another point, and there are 29 seconds for home movies starting now.
One thing you must beware of, and that is the flesh blinding the lens. Any cameraman will tell you that can cause flare, and therefore always powder down any naked flesh before...
Derek Nimmo,
Definition of flesh.
Yes, and 14 seconds, Derek. Home movies starting now.
Snap shooting is a rather good thing to take
Kenneth Williams has
home
challenged.
movies.
Hesitation. He again tried to justify his snapshots on the home movies. I agree with your challenge, Kenneth, and you have 10 seconds for home movies starting now.
Well, obviously, Derek Nimmo is a great master at this kind of thing.
Derek Nimmo, why are you challenged?
I just like to endorse his remark.
I thought he was going to be modest and say, I'm not a great master.
You must be mad,
He
Nick.
couldn't. No, he took the opportunity and he told them that he is a master, but he gives Kenneth a point, and
why
there
I
are 4
take
seconds
snaps.
left for home movies starting now.
And he always says, oh, to shoot you. That's what I really want to do.
So, Kenneth did a lot of speaking, and with a lot of challenges, he gained a lot of points, and he's leapt forward. And Sheila Hancock, it's your turn to begin. Sheila, the subject is pleasantries. Yes, you might well say that in this show, but can you give us an example or talk about them for 60 seconds, starting now?
This is something which you get very little of when you appear in Just a Minute. They are little phrases that make life easier. Things that you say to one another when you meet in the street, like, how do you do? What a lovely day. Isn't the world bright? Little jolly phrases.
Derek Nimmo, why have you challenged?
Little repetition.
Oh, did I?
Yes, but it was so little, I'm not going to challenge
Oh,
him.
no, you must.
No, it's not.
Go on, let him have it. I can't think of anything else to say anyway.
Let her have a go. Come on, there are 42 seconds for you, Sheila, having gained a point. Pleasantries starting now.
Derek Nimmo.
Derek Nimmo's got it anyway.
Hesitation.
Hesitation.
Go on,
All right,
Andy.
Derek. I can't deny it this time. 41 seconds for pleasantries starting now.
Oh, my dear old fruit, how lovely to see you. My goodness, isn't this the most charming way to meet on this sunlit morning? Goodness, you're looking well today. How's your grandmother? Is she in splendid form as well? These are things that you exchange, rather like traders going...
Kenneth Williams, why did you...
Deviation has already been established as you exchange them. She made that point in the street.
I know, yes, but why are you challenging then?
And why would we make it again? It's repetition.
No, it's not repetition, but you must either be repeating a word or a phrase. And Sheila said it before, not Derek. So I'm afraid it's incorrect. Derek gains another point, and there are 17 seconds for pleasantries, Derek, starting now.
How are you, then, love? You look absolutely great today.
Kenneth, why have you challenged?
Because I can't understand a word he says.
It's a very good challenge. I couldn't understand either, so how do I judge? Could you understand, audience? Yeah. Derek, say it again, will you?
I said, how are you, dear love?
Now you're going to be hanged for repetition by Clement Freud. You couldn't understand, Kenneth. I quite agree.
No, he does these funny voices every week.
I quite agree. And for someone like you to hear someone else do funny voices, it's very embarrassing.
It's
Kenneth.
annoying.
But also, it's annoying, yes, and his competition as well. So there we are. Kenneth, he wasn't technically deviating from the subject of pleasantries, but we couldn't understand him. I'm going to charge no points, leave the subject with Derek, and say there are 15 seconds to continue starting now.
I once knew a gentleman from China who came to this country and went to the part of the country where we have...
Clement Freud challenge.
Repetition.
Of country. Clement, you'll gain a point, and there are 8 seconds for pleasantries starting now.
The Duke of Wellington once came back from a shoot and said to his man, I have...
Derek got in first that time.
Hesitation.
Hesitation, yes. He couldn't quite remember what he said. Derek, there are 3.5 seconds for pleasantries starting now.
Marks of Uxbridge standing next to the Duke of Wellington, that particular time. God, sir, I've lost my leg. And said, yes, I certainly have.
An interesting situation at the end of that round. Gaining the extra point for speaking when the whistle went, Derek Nimmo now has a lead of 1 over Clement Freud. Derek, it's your turn to begin. The subject is swallows. Can you talk to us about them for 60 seconds, starting now?
There's one rather naively saying that one swallow doesn't make a summer. I think that's awfully true, don't you? But it does make an evening if you're out with the beer. My goodness, you have a great tankard in front of you, pick it up, and you swallow away. A lovely thing, isn't it? All the froth over the top, pouring down the table, and yet inside you is going down this fermented milk and brewing up inside your belly. And if you're a man...
Clement Freud, why have you challenged?
Repetition of inside you.
Yes, you were inside the ground. Yes, but idea of the beer brewing up inside you, too. Well, anyway, Clement, I agree with your challenge, so you get a point, and there are 38 seconds left for swallows, starting now.
The most popular formation in which these birds fly is known as the eagle, and swallows all over the world tend to group together with 1 in front, 2 behind, 3 thereafter, fanning out until a great...
A great hesitation.
Well done, Derek. There are 19 seconds for you to continue with swallows, starting now.
When I was very small, about 4 years old, I used to confuse swallows with house martins, but now I know better because their tails are quite different if you think about it. The swallows have long, thin, tapering ones, whilst the other birds are rather squat, and they build rather pretty nests in a rather
Clement Freud,
lovely thing, which is rather nice way of rather saying.
Repetition.
Yes. Of what?
Rather.
Yes, so just like the listeners to hear, so that they all know that you've got a correct challenge. Clement, I agree with your challenge, and you take the point and the subject. 3 seconds left, starting now.
When 29 Chinese gentlemen sit in one restaurant...
That, I'm afraid, is all we have time for, and as you probably realized, Clement Freud and Derek Nimmo were very close before that round began, so it was neck and neck, and they were battling it so keen, and the other two didn't get much of a look in the last round. But the final score is that Sheila was in 4th place, way behind Kenneth Williams, who was in a very good 3rd place, but they were both behind Derek Nimmo, who was only 1 point behind this week's winner, Clement Freud. That is, I'm afraid, all we have time for. As I said before, we do hope you've enjoyed this particular edition of Just a Minute, and from all of us here, goodbye.
The chairman of Just a Minute was Nicholas Parsons. The program was devised by Ian Rossiter and produced by Simon Brett.
Present Kenneth Williams, Derek Nimmo, Clement Freud and Sheila Hancock in Just a Minute. And as the minute waltz fades away, here to tell you about it is our chairman, Nicholas Parsons.
Thank you very much indeed, and welcome once again to Just a Minute. And once more, I'm going to ask each of the contestants to speak, if they can, for just a minute on some subject that I will give them without hesitation, without repetition, and without deviating from the subject. And according to how well they do it, they will gain points, or their opponents will gain points. And let us begin the show this week with Clement Freud. Clement, can you talk to us on the subject demonstrating? For 60 seconds, starting now.
The best place to demonstrate was the Mall, after which Constitution Hill, Hyde Park Corner,
Derek Nimmo has challenged you
Marble
very
Arch,
rapidly.
Piccadilly.
There was a definite hesitation. I'm afraid you hesitated in the Mall, or was it Constitution Hill? I'm not sure. But I agree there
With
was
intent.
a very, steady on, a definite hesitation. So Derek gains a point and he takes over the subject. And there are 56 seconds for demonstrating, Derek, starting now.
What I particularly like going to see are elderly bearded men demonstrating cookery. I think this is terribly fascinating and something which one should always buy tickets for if they are available. They seldom are, because when one thinks of people like we all know in this room at the moment, it is terribly difficult
Kenneth
to
Williams, why have you challenged?
We're in an auditorium, not a room.
That's perfectly correct.
Absolutely right.
Kenneth, I agree with your challenge, so you get a point. And there are 23 seconds for demonstrating, starting now.
One of the nicest experiences I've had is going to these stores where they show you how to do the grated carrots on a special little implement, and they say, you've only got to shove it in here and it comes out the other end, all done for you. You see, so that you won't have any bleeding fingers.
For those of you who may not know, whoever is speaking when the whistle goes, which tells us that 60 seconds is up, gains an extra point. On this occasion, it was Kenneth Williams. Sheila Hancock, will you take the next subject? And the subject is Medusa. That's made the audience go quiet. I hope it hasn't inhibited you. But will you talk to us about Medusa for 60 seconds, starting now?
Medusa was one of three sisters in Greek legend. They all looked rather unpleasant, particularly she. They had snakes for hair and snakes round their waist.
Oh, Clement Freud got in very rapidly. Yes, Clement?
Repetition.
Of
Snakes.
Yes, we have to be sure, otherwise the...
There were lots of them, though.
Yes. But, Clement, you take the subject, 51 seconds, Medusa, starting now.
To stand on a stage and say, have some Medusa, my dear, would really confuse people impossibly, because it should have been, have some Madeira, my ditto. But mythologically, she was a woman of evil intent. One who...
Sheila Hancock, why did you challenge?
That's not true. She wasn't of evil intent, actually.
It depends on the tent.
What makes you say she wasn't? I know she was evil, but why makes you say she wasn't of evil intent?
Well, I'll tell you if you let me have the challenge.
No, I don't make
No,
bargains.
because
but,
she didn't, in fact, intend evil. The fact that people turned to stone by looking at her was nothing to do with her.
That's right. You
Right.
gained a point and the subject, and there are 32 seconds, Sheila. Medusa, starting now.
She was killed by a person called Perseus, who managed it by carrying a mirror so that he didn't have to look at her directly and turn into stone. He also had a magic sword and wings on his heels. When the blood fell from the head, it caused snakes to rise from the
Derek
ground.
Nimmo, why do you challenge?
Head and snakes. Repetition.
Oh, yes, that's right. She said snakes before.
I wanted to hear what happened when the blood
So, Derek, you get the subject, having gained a point for a correct challenge. 16 seconds left. Medusa starting now.
To sail towards the land where Medusa lived, you have to start off from Athena in a long boat across...
Clement Freud is challenged. Why?
Deviation, you can start in Tunbridge Wells.
You can't sail from Tunbridge Wells, can you? But it's a correct challenge.
Start anywhere.
It's a correct challenge. No, it's a correct challenge. Clement, you gain a point, and there are 8 seconds left for Medusa starting now.
There is a travel agency which will sell you a ticket to go to the country in which Medusa lived. And this agency in Regent Street...
On this occasion, Clement Freud was speaking when the whistle went, so he gained an extra point and now has taken the lead at the end of that round. His lead of 1 over Derek, who has a lead of 1 over Kenneth, who has a lead of 1 over Sheila.
I don't care. I'm a good loser. A very good loser.
You're a beautiful loser as well. But you're also a very good winner. You've challenged yourself at this particular moment, Sheila.
Oh, have I?
I can't give any points for it, I'm afraid. Derek Nimmo, it's your turn to begin. Sucking lemons. That's what has been thought up for you by Ear Messiter, so can you talk to us about it for 60 seconds, starting now?
Whenever I want to go to the land where you can suck lemons, I always start from Tunbridge Wells. Now I get a train to London, which enables me to get a bus to the airport, and I fly to Spain.
Sheila Hancock, why have you challenged?
Deviation. There really is not only one particular land where you can suck lemons. You can suck them in Tunbridge Wells.
You can suck lemons anywhere, but I felt, the way I saw it, he was flying to a land where they grow lemons, and that's where he was going to suck them, and that's what I felt, and therefore I don't think it was deviation, Sheila. 47 seconds, Derek, for sucking lemons, starting now.
Landing in Madrid, I then go to Barcelona, because outside that particular town, there are these wonderful lands where you can...
Clement Freud is challenged. Who won?
Hesitation.
Yeah, there was a hesitation. I must explain. I must explain to the audience. Derek hesitated because he nearly hit Sheila right across the head by giving a magnificent gesture about these lemon groves. And so naturally, Clement got in and challenged. He was being gallant, and I don't know what to do. But if I've got to be fair to the rules of the game, it was a hesitation, so Clement gets a point. And there are 38 seconds for sucking lemons, starting now.
It is fairly difficult to suck a whole lemon, for which reason it is preferable to cut it in half, even into quarters, and put these into your mouth, preferably the pith in and the peel out. Hesitation. He said, that's all I wanted to say. I had no more. My contribution.
Because Clement actually stopped, they all three looked in stunned amazement, and nobody challenged. It was the longest pause of the game for about 2 years. Derek, you got in first, therefore you get a point, and the subject, 21 seconds, sucking lemons, starting now.
Whenever I see Kenneth Williams, I say, go suck a lemon, because that's a term of abuse.
Kenneth Williams, why do you challenge?
The whole thing is a tissue of lies.
So it's deviation.
Yes, exactly.
I must say, I've seen him meet you on many occasions. He does not always say, go suck a lemon.
That's to that effect, however.
No, he's never said go suck a lemon. He doesn't say it always, and that's what he said. So therefore, Kenneth, I agree with your challenge. You get the subject. 18 seconds, sucking lemons, starting now.
When I had the unfortunate experience of shrinking gums, they told me to suck these things because they said the acid properties would help the gums.
Clement Freud, why did you challenge?
Repetition of gums.
Yes.
Gum recession I use first, which is hyphenated, isn't it?
No.
Oh, it's a disgrace, they're all against me.
It might be, but it was fair. So Clement gets a point and the subject. 5 seconds, sucking lemon, starting now.
In the village of Little Easton in Essex, lemon sucking was one...
Kenneth Williams, why have you challenged?
In the village of Little Easton in Essex, there are no lemons. It's all lies.
Well, they could have imported them, to Little Easton, couldn't they? So that's your basis for the challenge. It's possible to have lemons in any place throughout this country. So technically speaking, it's not a correct challenge. Clement gets another point. 2 seconds, sucking lemons, starting now.
Along the coast of Northumberland.
Clement Freud was then speaking when the whistle went, so he has increased his lead at the end of that round. And Kenneth Williams, your turn to begin. The subject is delusions. The audience seem to appreciate that idea for you, so will you talk about it for 60 seconds, starting now?
One of the commonest of these is termed in the French phrase folie de grandeur, which means, really speaking, that people imagine themselves to be far posher than they really are.
Sheila Hancock, wife who challenged.
Deviation. It's not necessary to feel posher. You can have delusions that you're worse.
Yeah, but the folie de grandeur is surely feeling that you are posher,
yes.
you see. Which
Well,
is
he
what
does it so slowly, you've forgotten what the beginning of the sentence
He was going a bit slowly, but he wasn't, he was still managing to keep going, all right. So, Kenneth, you have another point and 40 seconds for delusion starting now.
Of course, there are other ones that people suffer from, which should not be discussed on a show like this, because, after all, one should never.
He was being so precise, but Clement Freud pressed his buzzer first. Yes, Clement?
Repetition.
Of?
Never.
Of course, yes. There we are, Clement. You take the subject and a point. 28 seconds. Delusion starting now.
I had an aunt who hid herself during the entire Second World War in a linen closet because she felt she was a clothes horse. This is the sort of delusion which psychiatrists...
Challenged.
Hesitation.
Yes, obviously it was completely devious, otherwise he would not. Who challenged? Anyway, Kenneth, I agree with your challenge on hesitation, so you get the subject, and there are 15.5 seconds. Delusion starting now.
George III once addressed the trees in Windsor Great Park and thought they were statesmen. And when someone said, "Sire, these are oaks, they are not diplomats," he said, "Nine."
So,
What did he say?
What did he say?
What did he say?
9. Reverted to the German, which was his native tongue.
And that would have been
You didn't say
repetition.
9-9.
You'd have been out for repetition
Yeah,
if
the
he said
repetition.
that.
I did say 9 in the whistle.
In the whistle.
It come out, you see.
I
because
know,
the
you did it
natural
beautifully,
outpourings.
Yes, you kept a lot of, you gave us a lot of thoughts on delusions, and you have crept up considerably at the end of that round. You're now only 2 points behind our leader, Clement Freud. Clement, it's your turn to begin. The subject is bugging. Will you talk to us about bugging for 60 seconds, starting now?
Bugging, among other things, is the term used for tapping or listening in on people's telephones or other conversations which they might have. And police in most countries of the civilized world have got authority to do this thing if properly instructed by a court of law. In England, it is...
Kenneth Williams.
Hesitation.
Yes, all right. Be so sharp with it. I agree.
And he hesitated while he buzzed.
Anyway, you can't get out of it, Clement. Kenneth has a point. 37 seconds. Bugging Kenneth starting now.
This is a disgraceful practice for which I have got no time whatsoever. There should be privacy in this world, and if we cannot talk intimately to each other without horrible fears of being reported in some terrible secret...
Clement Freud, why have you challenged?
Repetition of terrible.
Yes, you did have terrible before. So, Clement, I agree with your challenge, and there are 15 seconds for you to carry on with bugging starting now.
As a lad, I often went through the fields of Suffolk chasing maybugs, which practice was called bugging, or between Walberswick and Blythburgh, the term was called bugging. No. Thank you.
That last chuckle that you heard then, and why Derek is laughing now, is because actually Clement Freud came to a full stop, had nothing else to say, exactly as the whistle went, so he thanked dear Messner for blowing it. And at the end of that round, he has increased his lead, and he's still in the lead. Well done. So, let's press on with the show. Sheila Hancock, your turn to begin. Getting to sleep. Sheila, will you talk to us about that for 60 seconds, if you can, starting now?
This is something that a lot of people have a great deal of trouble with.
Clement Freud, why have you challenged?
Deviation.
Why?
It's not getting to sleep.
Oh, you're being too clever. No. This is
You
something
have a
that...
lot of trouble with getting to sleep.
Yes, there's
That's
nothing
right,
wrong with
surely.
that.
It's not getting to sleep.
Sheila Hancock has a point, and she has 56 seconds to continue with getting to sleep, starting now.
There are many different methods to help you with this. One is counting sheep, leaping over a gate. What I do is have a nice warm drink, get into a cozy bed. Before I do that, however, I usually practice a little yoga, which involves deep breathing and stretching and bending.
Kenneth Williams, why have you challenged?
Deviation? This is all physical activity. It's nothing to do with getting to sleep.
But a lot of people find they sleep much better after a lot of physical activity, and obviously Sheila's one of them. You can see what sort of an audience we've got, can't you? And you can see the sort of physical activity that they indulge in as well. I meant running about or doing yoga exercises. A good hearty run didn't do anybody any harm before going to bed. It goes straight out like a light. Sheila has another point, and there are 36 seconds for getting to sleep, Sheila, starting now.
I have to confess that I am not averse to the method that the audience intended by that dirty laugh. However, I do not recommend the taking of sleeping pills unless you're absolutely desperate.
Kenneth Williams, why do you challenge?
She's no right to sit here talking about recommending pills or not recommending them. She's not a doctor.
But that
Sitting there as though
doesn't
she's
matter.
some ancient apothecary.
She's neither ancient nor an apothecary, and she's perfectly entitled to give such a sensible, sane thought to anybody that she does not recommend
Oh,
sleeping
it's obvious
pills.
you're on her side. She must drop you a quid after the show.
He helps me get to sleep. By wearing me out on this program.
We do a little yoga together.
I don't know what to say.
Don't, Kenneth.
Shut your face for a change.
To use one of your expressions, shut your cake hole. So there we are. I don't know where we've got to in the show. I endorsed Sheila's thought about not recommending sleeping pills, which Kenneth challenged on. So Sheila gets a point, and she keeps the subject. 24 seconds left. Getting to sleep, starting now.
The reason I say that is because it's very easy to get hooked on this particular form of getting to sleep. There are, however, two different forms of tablets. Barbiturates.
Derek Nimmo challenge. Why?
Form.
What?
Repetition of forms.
Yes,
Yes.
it's a little unfair, but all right, you're absolutely accurate. So, there we are. Derek, you get a point. 14 seconds for getting to sleep, starting now.
Climbing into my bed, I lay my head on the pillow and begin to think of people that bug me, like Clement Freud, Kenneth Williams.
Actually, Derek, I'd have thought if you lay in bed and thought of Clement Freud, that might keep you awake. But anyway, you have gained more points at the end of that round. You have leapt into second place alongside Kenneth Williams, but you're both training behind our leader, Clement Freud. Derek Nimmo, your turn to begin. The subject is golf. Can you talk to us for 60 seconds on golf, starting now?
Golf is the rather...
Clement Freud challenge you.
Hesitation.
There was a hesitation. I think I gave you time to get going. Even to write it down is a short word. So I've got to be fair and accurate. And I can see on the clock there are 3.5 seconds have gone. So, Clement, you gain a point. 56.5 seconds golf, starting now.
Golf is a game which is played on links or courses, most of which have 19 holes, but some of which have only 9.
Derek Nimmo,
thereon.
why have you challenged?
Deviation. They don't have 19 holes. They only
Yeah,
have
well, this is a
18
very
or-
difficult situation because the clubhouse is always
I
referred
know,
to as the
they-
19th
the
hole.
links don't have
He did
19
say some of
holes.
it.
Only the
Yes, that's right. He
courses.
did say the courses
And the
which
links.
have 19 holes, so they don't have 19 holes on the course.
Quite
Clement.
right.
Yes, so Derek, I agree with your challenge.
Quite
51 seconds golf, starting now.
Golf is the rather vulgar and plebeian pronunciation of an ancient Scottish game called golf.
Clement Freud.
Hesitation.
Yes, it was a bit tough, wasn't it? But I have to be accurate, so he did actually hesitate. 45 seconds for you, Clement, on golf, starting now.
John Betjeman pronounces this game golf, feeling
Yeah.
that the L is entirely superfluous, and I agree with our best Poet.
Kenneth Williams, why do you challenge?
Hesitation.
I think that was a hesitation, yes. Kenneth, you gain a point, and you have 31 seconds for golf starting now.
Well, I get hold of the club and I swing it right the way back as far as I can manage, and then woof! And off the ball goes. Sometimes, I might add, into the canal, or, as has been known, the bunker. And I always say as an excuse, well, you see, I'm a country member, and therefore I don't really understand the game in the full sense of the word. Because I've always understood...
So many sort of little phrases to keep you going, Kenneth, but well done. You kept going, you got an extra point for speaking when the whistle went, and you have now moved up into a definite second place behind Clement Freud, who is leading at the end of that round. Derek Nimmo's in third place and Sheila's in fourth place, and Kenneth Williams, your turn to begin. Oh, Ian's thought of this for you, Garibaldi. Can you talk to us about Garibaldi, Kenneth, for 60 seconds, starting now?
This is the name of one of the great Italian patriots who did succeed in establishing the House of Savoy securely and gave his name.
Derek Nimmo, why have you challenged?
Well, he didn't establish them securely because they're no longer there. Deviation.
I think you could say they were there for such a long time that they were securely
Of course,
established.
you great idiot. You
Well,
can't
it was
cross
in
the icebergs out.
1840 or something, or 50 that he established them, and they weren't...
They were there right up to
imposed-
Mussolini,
yes,
weren't
about
they?
100 years.
Good
Yeah,
gracious
just
me,
under
yes, what a
100 years.
ridiculous challenge.
I think that's a fairly secure tenure, I really do.
Thank you very much, Nick. You're a very reasonable person.
I was, a little while ago, I was taking money from Sheila Hancock.
I was
Oh, dear. Yeah. So there we are. Kenneth, you have a point, and you have 54 seconds for Garibaldi starting now.
There are these little biscuits with these currants in between.
Clement Freud, why have you challenged?
Two of these.
Yes, but I'm not going to allow it. Kenneth Williams has another point, and there are 45 seconds for Garibaldi starting now.
And they take their name from him. For a while in London, he resided in a street off the Tottenham Court Road, and there's a plaque on the wall.
Clement Freud, why have you challenged?
Repetition
What?
of that giggle.
Actually, if it's a repetition of the giggle, it's incorrect, because he did one giggle that went on... No, he didn't repeat his giggle. Kenneth has another point, and there are 32 seconds for Garibaldi starting now.
And they say that he used to trudge up and down there, looking most bewildered and perplexed, because he couldn't understand the London postal.
Derek Nimmo, you've challenged
Repetition
one.
of London, actually.
Yes, London. We did have a repetition of London. I think you challenged the right moment. I think he was almost trying out.
He's actually running out of historic facts, which is
Yes,
right.
yes, he was historically running down. So there we are. Derek, you have a point, and there are 20 seconds for Garibaldi starting now.
When Garibaldi landed with his bunch of brigands in Italy, who could have foreseen?
Kenneth Williams, why did you challenge?
These were warriors fighting for the freedom of their country, and I don't think anyone in their right minds could refer to them as brigands.
He and his warriors were known as patriots. 16 seconds for Garibaldi, Kenneth, starting now.
When they first came to him in the grey-green hollows of Bowery, Corsica, they said George III is your uncle, and he said...
Derek Nimmo, why did you challenge?
George II.
All right. I gotta give it to you. See, again, this is the difficult problem, the chairman. One could say that they made a mistake and said it was George III, but I'm not going to. So, Derek Nimmo, I agree with the challenge. 8 seconds for Garibaldi, starting now.
They were a most noble crowd of fellows when they landed with him in Italia. And that's why people flocked towards him and said,
Sheila Hancock, why
my
have you
goodness,
challenged?
old Gary.
Yes, Sheila challenged you in hesitation. You were all over the place.
Hesitation?
Yes.
Hesitation? I was going full flight.
I know.
My arms were going
Complete
everywhere.
rubbish. You were waffling. You were...
Waffling at all.
Sheila has a point, and she has 2 seconds for Garibaldi, starting now.
Have little currants.
I'm afraid that's all we have time for. And the final score is Sheila Hancock is in fourth place, a few points behind Derek Nimmo, who is 2 points behind Clement Freud, who is 1 point behind this week's winner, Kenneth Williams. A popular win, obviously. Well, I'm sorry we have no more time because we enjoy playing Just a Minute, which I'm sure is obvious to you. From us all here, goodbye.
The chairman of Just a Minute was Nicholas Parsons. The program was devised by Ian Messiter and produced by David Hatch.
We present Kenneth Williams, Derek Nimmo, Clement Freud, and Andre Melly in Just a Minute. And as the minute waltz fades away, here to tell you about it is our chairman, Nicholas Parsons.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed, and welcome once again to Just a Minute. And as you just heard, we're delighted to welcome back somebody who's been so successful before in competing against these three eager men. Andre Melly. Well, Andre, I'm sure you're going to do just as well again. And may I remind you, the rules are as before. I'm going to ask them each to speak, if they can, on some subject that I will give them without hesitation, without repetition, and without deviating from the subject. And according to how successful they are in being challenged or not being challenged, they will gain points, or their opponents will gain points. And let us begin this week with Andre Melly. Andre, the subject that Ian has chosen for you is unblocking the kitchen sink. Can you talk to us about that for 60 seconds starting now?
This is an absolutely disgusting thing to have to do. And the best implement is a kind of squeegee stick. This has a wooden handle and a rubber nozzle, and you place it over the sink hole and move the stick up and down several times.
Derek Nimmo has challenged you.
Repetition of stick.
Oh, yes, I'm afraid you had too much stick there. So, Derek Nimmo, I agree with your challenge. You therefore gain a point, and there are 44 seconds left for unblocking the kitchen sink, starting now.
I personally use a very long pipe cleaner, the same sort of thing that Kenneth Williams uses for his nostrils.
Kenneth
down.
Williams has challenged you. Why?
I'm challenging on the grounds of
what?
Obscenity, I think. I think it's absolutely disgusting. I don't go around shoving pipe cleaners down the
probably
sink.
disgusting, but is there anything else within the rules of the game that he may be doing, Kenneth? Why else are you challenging?
Deviation. I don't put pipe cleaners down the sink.
Nose it up your nostril.
Well, I'm afraid.
I've done that, so he's right, so I
Oh,
can't.
there we are. Yes. I think you actually established on this program that you were capable of doing that. So there we are, Kenneth. I disagree with your challenge, which means Derek gets another point. He keeps the subject, and there are 37 seconds left for unblocking the kitchen sink, starting now.
To this...
Andre
word.
Melly, you've challenged.
Hesitation.
Hesitation,
Absolutely
I agree,
right.
Andre. So you gain a point, you get the subject back. There are 35.5 seconds for unblocking the kitchen sink, starting now.
The louder the skludge noise as you do it, the more successful you're being. However, if it doesn't work completely, take a washing up mop, turn it upside down, and stick the solid end of the object down the hole.
Derek Nimmo has challenged. Right.
Repetition of end and hole.
Yes, that is correct. So, Derek, you gain a point, and you have 20 seconds left for unblocking the kitchen sink, starting
Because what
now.
I do is I always tear away that large U-bend underneath. Get over that, throw it out the window, and the thing is totally unblocked.
Kenneth Williams, you've challenged. Why?
Obviously, you'd never tear away the S-bend. You'd have to unscrew it. You could never tear it. Not even a man with your kind of strength. Therefore, it is deviation, and I challenge on the grounds of deviation.
I want to be utterly fair to Derek on this. Obviously, I agree with you, Kenneth, that you couldn't personally tear it away, but he might say afterwards, but I may get a whole group of men in. So let the audience be the judge. If you agree with Kenneth's challenge, will you cheer? And if you disagree, will you boo? And will you all do it together now? The Boo's won it, I'm afraid, so Derek has a point. 14 seconds left for you, Derek, to continue, starting now.
Of course, if it's only slightly blocked, you can shove your finger down, squirt it round a bit, and bring out those old hair clips. I always falling out with my hair. Down they go.
Andre Melly, why have you challenged?
Repetition, 2 downs. In one
2
sentence.
downs, yes, absolutely right.
Jolly well done.
Andre, you've got another point, and there are 3 seconds for unblocking the kitchen sink, starting now.
Take a piece of wire and squiggle it about as well as you can.
Our audience suddenly came to life because they realized then, because they probably hadn't known before, that when the whistle goes, 60 seconds is up, and whoever is speaking when the whistle goes gains an extra point. On this occasion, it was Andre Melly, and she and Derek Nimmer both have 4 points at the end of the first round, and the other 2 have yet to score. In fact, one has yet to speak. I'm referring to Clement Freud, of course. Derek Nimmo, the subject chosen for you is aerobatics. Would you talk for 60 seconds about it, starting now?
On a July day, walking across the tarmac, I climb into my tiger moth, pull down my helmet on my head, shout contact to my mechanic, and start the plane going. We taxi slowly down the runway.
Clement Freud is challenged. Why?
Deviation.
Why?
Well, first of all, because I haven't spoken tonight. And secondly, because he was in his tiger moth on his own, and we taxied down the runway.
The royal we, the royal.
The Royal Nimmo Wee, but I think that actually it's a very clever challenge, isn't it? And he did establish he was in his alone, and you said we taxied, so that is deviation, yes. So, Clement, you have a point. You have 46 seconds for aerobatics, starting now.
You jump into your Cessna, pull your helmet over your head, shout contact, and taxi.
Derek Nimmo, why have you challenged?
Deviation. If you were in a Cessna, you wouldn't need a helmet.
You wouldn't need a helmet, but this is the problem that I have. You could wear a helmet, couldn't you?
No.
Why not?
Well, you could wear, you could wear a tin hat in a lavatory, couldn't you?
Yes.
I mean, honestly.
All right, the Royal We was a tough one against you, Derek, so I'll be tough with Clement here and give it... What do you got to say about that, Clement?
Well, it's normal safety procedure.
Well, that's what Look, put it to the audience then. This is your chance again. Will you please be the judge? If you agree with Derek's challenge, will you cheer? And if you disagree, will you boo? And will you all do it together now?
Boo!
The boo's down there, one, and the cheers up there were equal. All right, no points scored, because I think it was a draw. Clement Freud keeps the subject, and there are 39 seconds left. Aerobatics starting now.
I then put it on automatic pilot and go to the back of the aeroplane where there's a toilet in which I wear a tin hat.
Kenneth Williams, your challenge, why?
Well, because, I mean, it's disgusting. I don't
You mean wearing a tin hat in a toilet is disgusting?
Yeah, absolutely disgraceful and devious. It has nothing to do with aerobatics. The toilet
Well, perhaps
it's just to do with foibles.
I'd say that's the best way of starting aerobatics.
Yes, I thought so. Yes. I would have thought in the circumstances a tin hat might be quite a good choice. So, Clement Freud keeps the subject, continues with 32 seconds left, starting now.
Round and around we go.
Kenneth Williams, a challenge.
Well, what's a lounge mean?
So you challenge on deviation?
Yeah.
Yes, all right. I don't think any plane, my knowledge, has ever gone around. So, Kenneth, you have a point, and you have the subject. 27 seconds for aerobatics, Kenneth, starting now.
As we looped the loop, I felt...
Oh dear, Derek Nimmer's challenge.
Couple of loops.
Couple of loops.
No, looped the loop. L-E... You want to listen. You want to clean your ear out.
All right, we're down on the verge.
What, I've just been up your nose?
I have hardly spoken a word, and they're trying to get at me.
Kenneth has another point, and there are 22 seconds for aerobatics starting now.
No, I did not give way. I kept my countenance. I remained...
Clement Freud is challenged.
Well, 3 eyes.
I
and
know,
a
but we're not
face.
counting it. So Kenneth has another point, and there are 17 seconds for aerobatic starting now.
And the pilot said to me afterwards, though we did those incredible things spinning in the air, you stayed calm. Have you done it before? No!
Derek Nimmo is challenged.
First time, is it?
Deviation. Repetition. He's done it before.
I think what he said was, the other chap said to him, have you done it before? And therefore he's not repeating. Oh, he was repeating the phrase, of course. Yes, I'm so sorry. I thought it was the action you were referring to. I do apologize. Of course, yes, the phrase has been repeated, so Derek gets a point. And there are 7 seconds for aerobatics, Derek, starting now.
Double flips and back rolls are my own particular speciality. I grab hold of my joystick, plunge it forward.
On this occasion, Derek Nimmo was speaking when the whistle went, so he gains the extra point, and he now has a lead over all the others at the end of that round. Kenneth Williams, your turn to begin. Kenneth, the subject that Ian has chosen for you is Heinrich Schwarzberg. You've obviously registered the name, you may have thought of something to say about him, and you have 60 seconds starting now.
Well, this is the name he was born with, of course, in Schleswig-Holstein, but in his English period he was known as Blackwood, and it is as such that he is remembered notably for his work on behalf of neurotic rabbits. They were unable to burrow their own holes, and so he invented this machine that would do it for them. The problem was to get them attracted to it so they would follow the work that it performed. And this was achieved by putting a substance on the actual instrument which smelled of their mates. Then down the hole they went. Here, I'm gonna just stop it.
Once
Who
you
challenged me?
Clement Freud, once you mentioned
Yes.
once you brought sex into it, Clement Freud challenged.
Oh.
What is your challenge,
It's
Clement?
deviation from Heinrich Schwarzberg.
It's the whole point of his life's work.
And repetition of whole, if you must have.
No, his first challenge was a deviation from Heinrich Schwarzberg. Well, why?
Because he never talked about Heinrich Schwarzberg. He talked
I
about
thought
the.
that his life
He talked
was
about the.
a great name.
He talked about the Blackwood theory.
Yes, but he established that Blackwood was the name under which he worked in this country, which was
The subject is not describe the work of Blackwood. The subject is Heinrich Schwarzberg.
And you maintain he's deviated from it?
Yes, of course.
Well, I disagree, so the South Hope is with Kenneth Williams, and he has 8 seconds left, starting now. And Derek Nimmo's challenged you.
Hesitation.
And as the audience wouldn't let him, if you're going to challenge on such an ungallant thing as that, because the audience were clapping
Why do I
that
have to-
excellent decision of mine, Kenneth Williams gets another point, and there are 6 seconds for Heinrich Schwarzberg starting now.
The other thing that happened during his period in England.
Clement Freud challenged why?
Repetition of period.
Yes, you did establish the other period earlier on, his English period. So Clement Freud has very cleverly got in, alas, much to the disappointment of the audience, everybody else. Just before the end, there are 3 seconds left. Heinrich Schwarzberg starting now.
The first time I met Heinrich Schwarzberg was in a beer cellar.
So Clement Freud gets the extra point once again for speaking when the whistle went, and I must explain now why I gave that challenge earlier on against Clement Freud, because as far as Ian Messiter and I know, there is no such living person as Heinrich Schwarzberg, and Kenneth did jolly well to keep going with such utter rubbish about the man. Clement Freud, it is your turn to begin. The subject is time. Can you talk to us about it for 60 seconds, starting now?
Downing his dark lager in one gulp, Heinrich turned to the barman and said, "May I have yet another glass?" To which the aforesaid gentleman replied, time, this being a common cry to denote the fact that he was no longer serving his clientele, or customers as English people like to have it. But time is now very much in our minds because the 10-hour clock is about to come upon us, and this is going to become desperate.
Kenneth Williams, why have you challenged?
Deviation, there's such a thing as the 10-hour clock.
I agree with your challenge, Kenneth, and there are 26 seconds left, starting now.
Time on my hands and you in my arms are words that seem strangely applicable.
Clement Freud's challenged.
Words can't seems.
Words?
Deviation. Words can only seem.
I don't understand the challenge, I'm sorry.
He said, are words that seems.
I didn't. I said our words that seem strangely.
Seems.
Well, I'm sorry, it sounded perfectly all right to me.
Did it not from
he
here?
probably
did it?
ran 2
I'm
words.
thinking you're closer than you are.
So,
Even in football matches, they decide the person who's closest to the play has the best view.
but it doesn't mean to say the person closest has the best ears.
No.
And also, he can, obviously, when he's trying to keep going under difficult conditions, if some of his words happen to run slightly together, it is not deviation. There are 17 seconds for time, Kenneth, starting now.
Time hangs heavy.
Derek Nimmer's challenge, why?
Edition of Hangs.
Where's
He didn't
hangs
say
before?
hangs before. He didn't say hangs.
Didn't? I thought he did.
No.
What was the first?
Kenneth has
The
another
time on my
point.
hands and you in my arms.
Says it.
I wish it was happening right now.
14 seconds for time, Kenneth, starting now.
A broiled...
Andre Mellis challenge.
Hesitation for a broiled?
Yes, we don't know what his broiled was.
I was going to say a broiled chicken, but she just interrupted me. So I just...
Don't intimidate, and he said 1 word, 2 words are broiled, and he said, Kenneth, you have
Well,
another
how can I
point.
start saying a broiled chicken needs so much time to be cooked if she's ruined it?
Well, that's all that happens is that you've got another point, you see.
She's deliberately doing it to put me off. They're all doing it. I had it. I'm not joking.
Well, I wouldn't worry so far, Kenneth.
Pouring rain and everything. You tried your best.
So far, you've got a commanding lead with all their intimidation.
What am
So,
I going to do? I mean, am I supposed to go on?
you've got to try and go on if you can. Now, keep your pecker up.
Well, I mean, against you down.
Don't go to pieces, Kenneth. 12 seconds. Time starting now.
H.G. Wells dealt with this subject most magnificently in an article which he published in The Spectator in the year 1935. And he said there were aspects...
Well, time and the 10-hour clock has given Kenneth Williams a commanding lead at the end of the round over all the others, who are fairly equal in second place, by the way. Andre, your turn to begin again. The last time I broke the law. Can you talk to us about that, starting now?
What an absolutely rotten thing to talk about.
Yes, Clement Freud's challenged you.
Deviation.
Why?
It's nothing to do with breaking the law.
Yes,
But
it
she's
is
still
rotten.
entitled to say, apropos of the last time I broke the law, what a rotten thing to talk about, but the last time I did it, so and so she's entitled to say that as a way of
You
starting.
give her a point.
Well, I'm going to give her a point. Have you given her a point? Thank you. Right, Andre, you have another point, of course, and 57 seconds for the last time I broke the law, starting now.
Because once this broadcast's over, I might be arrested and carted off to jail. But I will tell you about a last time I broke the law, which was when I was 12 with my friend Isabel Ross, when we were at school in Liverpool and used to pinch from Woolworths.
Kenneth Williams, a challenge.
Hesitation.
Yes, once you came up with that truth, which is very honest of you, but Kenneth got you on hesitation. He has a point, and there are 40 seconds for the last time I broke the law, Kenneth, starting now.
I have never done it, so I can't discuss it.
Clement Freud has challenged you.
Deviation.
That's a clever challenge. On this occasion, I agree, Clement, so you get the point and the subject. 37 seconds, the last time I broke the law, starting now.
It was an extraordinary thing, but I went to Paddington to see the Inspector of Taxes, who was rather worried about my income tax return. And when I went up to the third floor, there was this gentleman called Prothero, who had oil in his hands which he rubbed in order to get all his fingers thoroughly mechanically perfect.
Andre Melly has challenged your wife.
You didn't hear the buzz. It was
No.
just about to happen, and it didn't.
Oh, I see. You anticipated. Well, I'm afraid all that happens, Andre, is because you did anticipate and the light came on, Clement Freud, you interrupted him, he gets a point, and there are 14 seconds for the subject, Clement, starting now.
It was dark on the beach, and I crept up to the policeman, holding my penknife above my head.
Kenneth Williams' wife, you challenged.
Deviation. He was discussing the last time he broke the law. We began in Paddington, and now we're on a beach, creeping up in the dark. We can't have two last times,
A very good challenge. In between Andre's challenge, you couldn't have gone out and done that other act, so the last time can't be twice. Kenneth, can you justify that, really, Clement?
Yes.
How?
Because it was Prothero on the beach.
Oh, no, I won't have it, no.
The scene moved.
You'd establish Prothero was on the third floor of the income tax office at Paddington.
People
No,
He got
no.
promoted.
They'll do anything to try and get the points. No, Kenneth, I agree with your challenge. There are 7 seconds for the last time I broke the law, starting now.
I was very young, and I picked
Derek
this
Nimmo,
carrot
would you-
off a stalk.
Deviation, he's already established that he's never broken the law.
But he's now going to try and talk
He
on
said, he said that he's never broken the law.
All right, but he's now going to talk on the subject, which is on the card, the last time I broke the law. Now, he could take that and say it was apropos of somebody else. He can take it any way he wishes, as long as he keeps going without hesitation.
I took it any way I wished, and I didn't get a point.
But you deviated because you could not break the law.
Anyway, you've no business to argue with the chairman. It's an absolute disgrace, isn't it? All but doing it, you've got to recognise proper authority in the country.
The last time I broke the law, Kenneth, 6 seconds, starting now.
Well, I did pinch a carrot when I was there.
Derek Nimmo's
Very
challenge.
well, Deviation, you already accepted his remark that he's never broken
Now
the
that
law.
I agree with you now, because he established before that you've never broken the law, and now you said I pinched a carrot, which you see is a breaking the law.
Well, I was telling lies. Your pet's perfectly.
Oh, you
he's
see,
told
they're
a
breaking
load of
so
lies
many
on this programme.
subtle-
Look at him. Look at his face. He's gone red. He's gone red. He knows it's true. Do you deny it, Nimmo? Do you deny you never told lies?
There we are. So obviously this is...
Yes, look at him.
This is...
Particularly non-post he is, isn't he?
I quite agree, actually. In this particular game, I'm sure they often tell lies in order to keep going, and I've been against Derek on that. But on this occasion, Kenneth established that he hadn't, and now he's established that he pinched. So deviation. Derek, you have a point. 4.5 seconds left, starting
The
now.
last time I broke the law, when I found a pavement.
Clement Freud. challenge.
Hesitation.
Yes, I'm afraid so. So there are 2 seconds for you, Clement. Last time I broke the law, starting now.
Opening his ledger.
On this occasion, Clement Freud was speaking when the whistle went. He gained the extra point, but Kenneth has increased his lead at the end of that round because he also gained some more points. And Clement's just in second, so he is way behind in second place, 1 point ahead of Derek, who is 1 point ahead of Andre. Kenneth, your turn to begin. Bravura. Will you talk on that subject for 60 seconds, starting now?
Well, this really is mainly used in the musical sense. It's an Italian term and means to be executed with expertise, something of a flourish, a little panache, perhaps, and would be applicable to my style. Anything that I do is done with such elan that people are staggered and they fall back and cry out, "Oh, what bravura he's got!" In fact, they've often said, "Show us more of it." And I have had difficulty in controlling their patience over this prowess of mine. But of course, it would be.
Clement Freud's challenge.
Repetition of course.
All right, so you have another point, Clement, and there are 16 seconds for bravura, starting now.
If you went into the desert with a toothbrush and attempted therewith to kill a lion, it might well be called bravura, because it is the most futile gesture, unlikely to succeed, and in fact, desperate.
Andre Melly has challenged.
Hesitation.
Hesitation, I agree, and
I
so
freely
you got in
admit it.
just before the end. And Andre, there are 2 seconds for bravura, starting now.
And if I were you, I wouldn't do this.
Well, I'm afraid we have no more time. Doesn't 30 minutes go quickly? 60 seconds seems to take much longer, doesn't it? So let me give you the final score. Andre Melli, coming in with a rush at the end, getting that extra point when the whistle went, came in third place, equal with Derek Nimmo. And they were just behind Clement Freud, who was 4 points behind this week's winner, Kenneth Williams. So, once again, Kenneth's bravura took him into the lead and kept him there, and he's won once more. He's just been round congratulating everybody else and giving them all a great big hug because he's so overjoyed at the idea.
It's exhilarating, isn't
Yeah.
it? It so seldom happens to me.
Oh, it happens quite a lot. Anyway, we've been exhilarated playing Just a Minute, so thank you very much for coming. We hope you've enjoyed this edition of Just a Minute. And from all of us here, goodbye.
The chairman of Just a Minute was Nicholas Parsons. The program was devised by Ian Messeder and produced by Simon Brett. We present Kenneth Williams, Derek Nimmo, Clement Freud, and Andre Melli in Just a Minute. And as the minute waltz fades away, here to tell you about it is our chairman, Nicholas Parsons.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed, and welcome once again to Just a Minute. And may I remind you, the rules are as before. I'm going to ask them each to speak, if they can, on some subject that I will give them without hesitation, without repetition, and without deviating from the subject. And according to how successful they are in being challenged or not being challenged, they will gain points, or their opponents will gain points. And Derek Nimmo, will you begin this week? Jellyfish. Will you talk to us about jellyfish for 60 seconds, starting now?
This is a perfectly rotten subject to be given, but I will endeavour to speak about jellyfish. Not awfully attractive things, rather a misnomer if you think about it, because they're not fish at all, are they, really? Then, one of the things that really attracts me to them is when you see them in the Bay of Biscay, those great Portuguese men of war, floating towards you with their tentacles hanging down. And you've got to do a pretty nippy crawl to get away, haven't you, really? If you think about it, because if you stay there, you'll get stung. And there's nothing worse, because you have to be dragged up into a boat, put on your back, and people come along and flop things on you, cold creams and ointments, until eventually you're repaired and put ashore once more. I once knew a lady who was called Mrs. Fish, and because she was so fat, we all used to call her Mrs. Jellyfish, and she didn't like it at all.
Clement Freud's challenge, why?
Repetition of misses.
Mrs. Jellyfish. Mrs. There was a
Oh,
repetition.
yes, absolutely
Mrs.
right. Give it in.
Absolutely right, yes.
Yes,
There we
jolly
are.
good.
Well, we loved it so much, you see. We were all with you. Clement Freud, I agree with your challenge. There was a repetition of Mrs. So you take over the subject, having gained a point. 10 seconds left. Jellyfish, starting now.
And Mrs. Fish lived in Liverpool and looked after Derek Nimmo when he was a small boy, together
Kenneth
with
Williams, why have you challenged?
Deviate.
Why?
Because she never looked after him when he was a
did.
small boy.
She did, actually.
She did.
Well, as Derek Nimmo says she did, and Clement Freud was speaking, I must disagree.
Well, anyway, I was awfully bored by all this jellyfish stuff. I think it's disgraceful, so it's deviation on the grounds of boredom, and that's perfectly fine.
We can't create that rule or we never get going. Clement Freud, I disagree with the challenge, so you gain another point, and you have 5 seconds for jellyfish, starting now.
She was later succeeded by Nurse Lightfoot, who kept jellyfish.
Kenneth Williams, why have you challenged?
Deviation, that is not true.
I am inclined to agree that that wasn't true.
No, it was actually true. Absolutely true. Nurse Lightfoot.
He's constantly talking about Nurse
Well,
Lightfoot.
it's about Derek's youth. Can you, as a man who plays men of God
He's
on
always
occasions-
talking about them.
Actually, by very curious terms, I'm blessed to have to say that Miss Lightfoot lived next door to me. She's getting married this very Saturday at the Delphi
let's
Hotel
have a round
in
of applause
London.
from Miss Lightfoot.
Yeah, thank you.
Go
Absolutely true.
What's she got to do with jellyfish?
Yes.
I was If you challenged on that score,
That's
it
what
would
I
have
meant
been
to challenge you.
But I'm afraid you didn't, and Derek's firmly established that Miss Lightfoot did look after him, so Clement wasn't deviating. He has another point, 2 seconds left, starting now.
Halibut in aspic.
Well, jellyfish, Miss Lightfoot, and many other things have helped Clement Freud to get many points at the end of that round. In fact, at the end of the first round, he is the only person who has scored. Kenneth Williams, it's your turn to begin.
Oh, at last.
We have heard from you, Kenneth, to some effect as well.
Yes, but I mean, my subject. I haven't had a subject, have I?
Well, we hope this is your subject, because Hermes has thought of Rasputin for you.
Oh,
So can you talk to us about Rasputin for 60 seconds, starting now?
well, only in a very general sense. He was at the court of the Tsar.
Derek Nimmer's challenge.
Deviation. He wasn't a general, he was a monk.
I said in a general sense.
A clever try, but not a legitimate challenge, so Kenneth gets a point. 55 seconds for Rasputin, Kenneth, starting now.
One biographer described his cult as being unspeakably foul, and I am perfectly prepared to believe it. He exercised some sort of influence over the Empress because she thought he could wreak some miraculous...
Derek Nimmer's challenge again.
Deviation. She wasn't an empress, she was a czarina.
She was the Tsarina, but I mean...
She was also the Empress, yeah.
Can't you
The
refer to
Empire
the
of
Empress of
Tsar
Russia?
of Russia, wasn't the emperor
was an
of
emperor
Russia.
as well.
The
But
Tsar of Russia.
The Tsar of Russia and the
And his
Tsarina,
wife
but
was the
sometimes
Tsarina.
she's referred to as the Empress, isn't she?
Yes, she is.
Or Fred. I mean,
All right. Well, as I'm not sure, I'll be perfectly honest about this. I will let the audience be the judge, because they're always the final
Oh, yes,
judge.
brilliant.
If you think that she
Yes.
can be referred to as the Empress of
can
Russia...
we confine this vote to people with a degree in history?
Yes. All those with any degree in history, put up your hands. We have
Good,
somebody in the
right,
back. There's somebody in the back with a degree in history, so you will be the judge. Can the Tsarina of Russia be referred to as the Empress of Russia? Yes. Thank you very much. I thought I was right. Kenneth, Rasputin is still with you, and there are 38 seconds left, starting now.
Well, one night, a member of the court, Prince Yusupov, threw this party and done him in. I believe it was a rather nasty business. He stabbed him in all kinds of places. I don't want to go into it now, because obviously you're not the kind of people who want to hear about a load of filth like that. But suffice it to say...
Derek Nimmer's challenged.
Deviation. I am the sort of person who wants to hear a
One of those impossible challenges that I have to decide about, and what I will say is this, that Kenneth was definitely looking at the audience in the studio when he said, you don't want to hear about that, and his gaze was nowhere near Derek Nimmer's.
Nonetheless, Derek's valid. It's a valid thing. It's
All
quite
right,
valid.
give Derek a point.
It is valid. He's very clever. He made a definite point there.
Yes, he was very... And the audience enjoyed it. Their
Very
applause
nice.
means they approve of the challenge, so give Derek a point, but I don't think he was, strictly speaking, deviating from the subject of Rasputin.
Well, I'm left
So
with this
Ken-
one subject.
And 19 seconds left to point to Derek, starting now.
Well, actually, Malenkov, in his book on Rasputin, says the lice were jumping in and out of his beard, and that he retreated from the figure for fear of infection. How would you like it if you saw a load of things crawling?
Well, and Kenneth, in spite of not liking the subject, he managed to keep going in spite of 3 interruptions and finish with it, gained the extra point for speaking when the whistle went, and we now move on. Oh, the score at the end of the second round, Clement still in the lead, Kenneth in second place. Clement Freud, Japan. Can you talk to us about that for 60 seconds, starting now?
I have been to Japan to witness the Olympic Games, which took place there in 1964, but I have recently visited a Japanese restaurant where the fare from that country was on offer. And what surprised me particularly was that we sat down very low on the floor, and a waitress brought saucepans and knives and forks and bits of food and a burner, and we were asked to cook our own repast, which amazed me because the bill was exceedingly high, and I wondered whether if we stayed and did the washing up, would we have been able to afford the asking price of that establishment. Japan is a country which consists of many islands, highly populated, with labor which used to be vastly underpaid and is now coming to a parity in international scale. But
And I think he almost dried up at the end, but he just kept going, started with a subject, finished with a subject. First time it's happened for a week or two, so Clement Freud not only gets the point for speaking on the whistle, but a bonus point, and increases his lead at the end of that round. Andre Melly, the subject for you this week is fig leaves. Can you talk to us about that for 60 seconds, starting now?
These became very famous early on in the Bible as the first kind of topless bikinis. They grow.
Derek Nimmer's challenge.
No hesitation.
Hesitation, I agree. Derek, you take over the subject. 50 seconds for fig leaves, starting now.
I like them particularly when they're newly plucked from a tree and then put around a little concoction of rice and meat, and you have dolmades. These should be eaten, especially, I think, in the Aegean on one of those lovely islands like Paris.
Clement Freud is challenged.
deviation.
Why?
Aegean is not an island. It's a sea.
But he said...
In the Aegean Islands, oh love.
You
In
talk
the
about
Aegean or one of those lovely islands.
in the Aegean, or one of those lovely islands, he didn't get any further because you had decided that that sounded like.
I really think.
I disagree with the challenge.
Swim out into the sea and eat vine leaves.
Derek Nimmo has a point, and there are 35 seconds for fig leaves, starting now.
They're particularly attractive if you swim out into the sea to eat them. They then should be held between your teeth whilst you're doing a crawl or perhaps a gentle back.
Kenneth Williams, why have you challenged?
Deviation. Nobody stands about eating fig leaves in the water. It's a load of rubbish.
I don't think anybody would actually take these in their mouths out into the Aegean. But of course, it is possible that you could do it. This is the difficult problem one has in making decisions.
It's deviation. Come along, it's established as deviation.
No,
I
I think... All right, I'll leave this one to the audience because it is possible that you could do this, though it does sound a very devious action. Therefore, it's possible, if you agree with Kenneth's challenge, will you cheer? And if you disagree, will you boo? And will you all do it together now? They have decided that people do not swim out to the Aegean with fig leaves in their mouths. So, Kenneth, you have a point, and 25 seconds for fig leaves, starting now.
Well, I have nothing to say about fig leaves.
Andre Melly got in first.
Deviation, because there's nothing to say.
All right, Andre, you have a point. 19 seconds for fig leaves, starting now.
They are to be found in the Mediterranean next to the figs, which are very delicious fruits, and I believe they can...
Clement Freud, challenge.
Hesitation.
Hesitation, I agree, Clement. Another point to you. 15 seconds for fig leaves, starting now.
My first zoot suit was made entirely from fig leaves, and the jacket hung...
Derek Nimmer's challenge.
Deviation. If we won't allow you to swim out into the Mediterranean with fig leaves in your mouth, you can't possibly have a zoot suit made of fig leaves.
Can you justify a zoot suit from fig leaves? No, you can't. 4 seconds for you, Derek, on fig leaves, starting now.
If you buy a box in Fortnum and Mason of these particular...
Kenneth Williams, a challenge.
Advertising, you're not allowed to do that by BBC Charter.
What a difficult decision, because deliberate advertising you could call... yeah, but he's not deviating from the subject on the car, which is fig leaves, even though he must watch it, because he's not allowed to advertise on the BBC. 1 second left for fig leaves, Derek, starting
I
now.
always watch fig leaves on BBC.
So Derek leapt forward with fig leaves from, I think, the 4th position.
Cheating he was. That's how he leapt forward. Cheating. All that stuff about swimming out and eating them, swimming out in the ocean to eat fig leaves.
Anyway, he's now in 2nd place, 1 point behind our leader, who is still Clement Freud. Derek Nimmo, your turn to begin. The subject is Ludo. Can you talk to us about it for 60 seconds, starting now?
Oh, gosh, that reminds me of my happy nursery days with nurse fish.
Somebody pressed the buzzer, but they didn't keep it on long enough because no light has come on.
It was me.
All right, Kenneth, what was your challenge?
I don't want to hear about this nurse again.
He's always dragging his nurse in.
Anyway, I disagree with the challenge, Derek. You have another point. 56 seconds. Ludo starting now.
Very happy game, played on a square board.
Kenneth Williams, your
Yeah,
challenge.
before he said, it reminds me of my happy days.
That's
and now
right.
we've had happy days.
Repetition of happy. So, Kenneth, you have a point on this occasion, and there are 53 seconds left for Ludo, starting now.
I first met Mrs. Doe in the Isle of Dogs, and her Christian name was Louise. She was therefore often referred to as Lou Doe. I became very much attached to her, so much so that on one occasion we had to be unglued.
Andre Mel is challenged.
Very much so much.
Yes, there was a repetition of much, which I have to agree with and
That's
say...
fair enough. I would accept your verdict. You're a very fair man. I know that.
Good, look, therefore, Andre has a point for that. 34 seconds left for Ludo, starting now.
This lady kept a fish and chip shop, which was very successful.
Kenneth Williams, why did you challenge?
Deviation, she don't know her. I know her. I mean, she pinched her off me. That's my character, isn't it? That's my character, isn't it? She pinched her.
If it was a fictitious Ludo, she's obviously pinched her, in which case she can take Ludo anywhere she likes. If yours was a real one, then she can also have her own real one. And so forth, she wasn't technically deviating from the subject.
Can we ask, is there any genealogists in the audience?
30 seconds for you to continue with Ludo, Andre, starting now.
Many an evening I've sat with Lou enjoying my 1 and 9pence worth of chips and crackle.
Derek Nimmo, challenge.
hesitation.
I think so. Only just, but just there. Derek, 25 seconds for Ludo, starting now.
When the Wingradsky brothers applied for their television license and subsequently became associated...
Clement Freud.
Deviation.
Why?
You can't have multiple applications of television licenses.
But he never said there were multiple applications. He said they were the brothers, but they applied it. It must only be one application with the brother's name on it. And so Derek has another point. Ludo, 18 seconds left, starting now.
You have a little cube, and on it there are 6 numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the one I mentioned a moment ago. You shake it inside a little pot and throw it down and see what you have been given by the gods of chance.
Kenneth Williams challenge on gods of chance.
Because the gods of chance don't... there's no such thing. It's a load of rubbish. There's no such thing as the gods of chance. There's no such thing.
It's a colloquial expression.
No, it's not at all. Nobody goes around here saying, look, the gods of chance.
All right, let the audience be the final judge. So, if you agree with Kenneth's challenge about the gods of chance, would you cheer? And if you disagree and believe that Derek is right, would you boo? And will you all do it together now? On Derek's side, there's no doubt about it. The gods of chance have won the day. Derek has 1 second left for Ludo, starting now.
Catch people.
Clement Freud challenged.
Hesitation.
No. Derek has another point. Half a second left for Ludo, starting now.
Oh, my goodness me!
At the end of that round, Derek Nimmo has a very commanding lead over the others. Clement Freud is in second place, and Kenneth Williams and Andre Melly are almost equal in third place. Kenneth, your turn to begin. Subject which I think Ian's chosen specially for you, old gentlemen. Can you talk to us about old gentlemen, starting now?
Well, of course, I am one myself, and I have tottered about the streets of Bloomsbury and St. Pancras for many moons, and am an habitué.
Derek Nimmo's challenge, why?
I can't understand the word. Could you... I quite have it.
You're obviously not old enough.
Could you
That's
put it...
funny coming from you, who always does those funny voices every week.
You can't understand a word. On what basis you're challenging?
Well, hesitation.
Oh, no. He did keep going in a rather elderly way, but he kept going. Kenneth, you continue with 42 seconds left. Old gentleman, starting now.
One of the peculiarities of old gentlemen is that the back of the larynx becomes very restricted with the approach of old age. And this very often makes speech a peculiar difficulty, but they still go on plucking up their courage like I do. And
Andre Meller's challenge, why?
Well, he's getting red in the face. I think he's going to pass out, so I thought I'd better give him a breather.
Well, old men often do pass out when they get a bit too excited, but that is not a correct deviation from old gentleman too. 11 seconds, and it's starting now.
Well, let them have.
A Clement Freud challenged.
Deviation.
Why?
From that awful voice he had.
Give Clement Freud a bonus point for a good challenge and leave the subject with Kenneth Williams because he wasn't, strictly speaking, deviating from old gentleman. 8 seconds left, starting now.
a bit of pleasure in the bushes.
Clement Freud's challenged you again.
Deviation from that other voice. You think I'm pushing my luck?
Yes, you are. You have pushed it. Even the audience think you pushed it too far. Kenneth has another point. 5 seconds for old gentleman Kenneth, starting now.
Some of them affect spats, and I must say I have a predilection for them myself.
Well, on this occasion, it was Kenneth Williams who was speaking when the whistle went, gains the extra point. He also gained a number of others, and he has leapt forward equal in second place with Clement Freud, but they're both trailing 4 points behind our leader, who is still Derek Nimmo. Andre Melle, your turn to begin. Elastic. Can you talk to us about elastic for 60 seconds, starting now?
This is something which comes in all different shapes and sizes. There's the black, thick kind used for garters, and the thin, white variety for...
Oh, Derek Nimmo challenge. Hesitation, I agree, Derek. And there are 54 seconds left for elastic, starting now.
Well, if you snap your elastic, this often leads to nudism, particularly in elderly gentlemen. And therefore, it's something you've got to be terribly careful about. I make sure when I put my knickers on in the morning, they're firmly in place. And I do commend this to you all. When you go out of this building tonight, make sure your elastic's all right.
Kenneth Williams has challenged you.
Why? Why? Come on. Why? What's wrong? What's wrong with that? Come on, tell me.
As you said, you put your knickers on every morning.
I do.
I don't believe you.
Derek, in order to
I've
get the
often
points, you
seen
have to
him
prove
without
it.
knickers. He's quite right.
If I display my knickers, I will be accused of deviation. So therefore, I'm not going to be condemned.
They're
by
so
removing my
clever the way
trousers.
they wriggle out of it. I think, to be fair to Derek Nimmo, I don't think he wears knickers. Do you think he wears knickers, audience?
Yes, of course they do.
Yes, they all think he wears knickers.
All think
All
I
right,
wear
the audience is the final judge. You really think that Derek wears knickers? Yes. So Derek and his knickers get a point. And 37 seconds for elastic, Derek, starting now.
If you want to go and shoot a stone at somebody, you should get some elastic, put it on the end of the two pieces of wood which are joined in the middle, pull it back rather hard, and let it go straight into the control box up there. And you'll hit old David Hatch, and what fun that would be. Another use for elastic is if you are in an aeroplane and you want to wind down the window in a gypsy moth, then you pull a piece of this material very hard in a circular direction, having wound it around the pin like that variety.
Derek Nimmo was speaking when the whistle went. Also, his elastic and his knickers gained him a lot of extra points and has increased his lead at the end of that round. And Derek, it's your turn to begin the next round. And the subject is sentiment. Can you talk to us about sentiment for 60 seconds, starting now?
I do think this is a most wonderful quality for one to have. Kenneth Williams is a man of quite extraordinary qualities. I have seen him go out into the street on a dark night.
Clement Freud, wife who challenged.
I don't want to hear any more.
So why do you challenge?
To save my friend from embarrassment.
I'm not embarrassed. You such a great mouth. I was loving it. Loving every minute of it. Go on, Derek. It's nice.
If he wants to go out on a dark night, it's his own business.
Yes, but within the rules of the game, what was your basis for challenging?
It's nothing to do with sentiment.
Well, on the contrary.
I think she was showing very warm sentiments towards Derek. Sometimes the way he speaks to him, you wouldn't believe he felt so warm towards him.
I should give him a point.
He's going to get a point.
Oh, good.
So he's won
Let's
a point
stop talking
because of an
about it
incorrect
then.
challenge. And he continues for 23 seconds for sentiment starting now.
My dear old chum is sometimes reduced to tears by the sentiments of Clement Freud, who are often vulgar.
Andre Merry challenge.
Deviation, it's sentiment, and he said the sentiments, which is what he's talking about.
Sentiment and the sentiments is a slight difference. 4 seconds left, Andre. Sentiment starting now.
This is something that women particularly know about, and these men here...
Well, I'm afraid we have no more time to play Just a Minute. Again, 30 seconds has gone in a flash. And at the end of that round, in spite of that last challenge of Andre, she crept up a little, but she was finally in 4th place. And Kenneth Williams was in 3rd place without any doubt this week. And 2nd place was taken by Clement Freud, but he was still behind Derek Nimmo, who had an overwhelming number of points. And so he's this week's winner, Derek Nimmo. We hope you've enjoyed this edition of Just a Minute. And from all of us here, goodbye.
The chairman of Just a Minute was Nicholas Parsons. The program was devised by Ian Messeder and produced by Simon Brett.
We present Kenneth Williams, Derek Nimmo, Clement Freud, and Barbara Castle in Just a Minute. And as the minute waltz fades away, here to tell you about it is our chairman, Nicholas Parsons.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed, and welcome once again to Just a Minute. And as you've just heard, we're really privileged to welcome to the program this week, Barbara Castle. We also congratulate her on her courage in coming along here to play the game and do battle with these 3 experienced and intrepid exponents of the game. The very best of luck, Barbara.
Thank you.
Once again, I'm going to ask them all to speak, if they can, for just a minute on some unlikely subject without hesitation, without repetition, and without deviating from the subject. And according to how well they do this, how often they're challenged, they will gain points, or their opponents will gain points. And let us begin the show this week with Kenneth Williams. Frederick the Great. Can you talk to us about Frederick the Great for just a minute, starting now?
Well, he was renowned for welcoming at his court some men who were perceptive indeed, among them Voltaire. In fact, one morning they were walking in the grounds and he said, "What is democracy, dear?" Because he was very, very affectionate towards him. And he said, "Well, it means that you must say to them, I disagree heartily with what you say, but will defend to the death your right to say." Who's dead? Who's interrupted?
Clement Freud is interrupted.
Oh, what a nerve.
Clement, what have you challenged?
Repetition.
Of
3
what?
sads and 2 sads.
Yes, you have.
That's neither here nor there. Ask them. They were interested. Look at him. He was throbbing. He was liking it. He was loving it.
We were all loving
He was
it.
loving it. Look at him. He don't want to be deprived.
What, Kenneth?
He don't want to be deprived.
Save
That
a
was
little.
lovely anecdote,
We've
that
only
was.
just started. Save a little for later in the show.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes. You did repeat said more than once, so therefore, Clement Freud, I agree with your challenge. You gain a point.
And
you
would you, partisan? I think you were biased.
Yes,
I know
and
he
when I
drops you.
disagree with the others, I'm partisan towards you, so that's the way the clear is. So, Clement, you have 32 seconds to take over the subject of Frederick the Great, starting now.
Frederick the Great was only great compared to people like...
Kenneth Williams, your challenge.
Great repetition.
I know, but great is on the card. Kenneth! Stop making faces at the audience and listen to the German. The thing is that great is on the card, and we have established many times that you can repeat what is written on the card.
Can indeed repeat what is written on the card. Therefore, he should have said Frederick the Great. He didn't. He said great twice.
He said Frederick the Great
I'm
was
not
great.
standing here arguing about it.
All right then, don't let's argue. Clement Freud has another point because I disagree with your challenge, and he continues with Frederick the Great, and there are 28 seconds left, starting now.
Philomena of the lesser slim waist.
Kenneth wins the challenge.
Philomena is totally irrelevant to the subject of Frederick the Great.
You haven't given him a chance to see whether he's going to connect the
There
two
is no
yet.
connection at all. She was a Greek goddess who was turned into a nightingale by Zeus.
Well
Therefore,
done.
she's nothing to do with
You're rapacious today. Clement, what were you going to say?
Has nothing to do with Frederick the Great.
Oh!
Because she occurs in Greek mythology when
Kenneth, you see, I must be fair. As you hadn't given him a chance to connect to, whether he's going to say it or not doesn't matter. He got a good laugh. I really can't allow because he hadn't got going. So Clement has another point, and there are 25 seconds for Frederick the Great starting now.
there were many American liberals who called Stonewall Jackson.
Kenneth wins the challenge
American
again.
liberals and Stonewall Jackson have nothing to do with Frederick the Great, but again, in deviation.
We can't go on like this. Obviously, we have to put it to the audience because...
Give it to him. Give it to him.
You want to give it to him? All right, he wants Frederick the Great. That's a great generosity on the part of Clement Freud. It deserves a round of applause, but don't bother, we haven't got time. Kenneth, you have the subject back of Frederick the Great, and there are 23 seconds left, starting now.
He had a penchant for tall men and imported some people from the Caribbean because he was told they were all over 6 foot, erroneously, of course. But they were shipped, and without holes being bored in the boxes they were shipped in, most of them died in the process. And when he opened the box, he said, "Oh, hello!"
Derek Nimmo challenged you. Why?
Repetition of box.
Yes.
Yes, I'm afraid you repeated your boxes.
Most ungallant of you.
I know, but it was rather clever getting in just before the whistle. So you did repeat boxes, so I agree with Derek's challenge.
So he's got in just before the end to get the point. That's what he's done, isn't he?
No, he got a legitimate point because you repeated boxes and he was the first to challenge. So Derek has a point and he has 2 seconds for Frederick the Great starting
Nancy
now.
Mitford has been a great aficionado.
At the end of that
Or
round,
anyone could get in with 2 seconds. What you clapping for?
they're a very warm, generous audience.
Warm, daft ape sauce. It's me that done the work and he got in and you know it. With those last 2 seconds, it's a disgrace. I've got a good man to pack up.
Control yourself, Kenneth. You give an exhibition of flamboyance and rapaciousness and now misery, so please, the audience is completely on your side. You've insulted them and they've laughed, so just be content. Clement Freud at the end of the first round has 3 points, Derek has 2, and Barbara... Kenneth has 1, and Barbara's yet to score. But Clement, it is your turn to begin. Getting up early. 60 seconds starting now.
As soon as the sun is in the ascendant, it is essential to draw back the bed linen, including the blankets, jump out of whatever you lie in, and...
Kenneth, you've challenged again.
Deviation.
Why?
He's already established what we're lying in, so why say whatever we're lying in?
Well, he can say it if
But
he
he's
wants
thrown
to.
back the blanket so we know what he's lying in.
Yes, but he's still talking on the subject of getting up early. He's not deviated from the subject on the card.
Oh, I don't know why I'm here.
You're here for the entertainment value, which is marvellous. Clement, you have 47 seconds to continue with getting up early, starting now.
Soon after, you hear the ring of the alarm bell, and your knickers, combinations...
Derek Nimmo, you challenged.
Well, there's a hesitation between his knickers and his combination.
There was a very definite hesitation. He didn't quite see how he can combine the two. So he hesitated. I agree, Derek, you gain a point, and the subject, there are 42 seconds left. Getting up early.
I do
starting
think it's tremendously important to get up early. When you're lying in bed, the sun is out, and the clouds are floating through the heavens, you think to yourself, why are you wasting your day? Or at least that is what I do. So I determine every morning on the stroke of 7:30, which is desperately early as far as I'm concerned, to get up. And when I do my Indian club routine, which is quite magnificent. I thrust something in the hair, I throw one to one side, and I expand my chest, which, if you look at it, is extremely inconsiderable. And then, when I have done this, I get onto my bicycle, and you know, when the fumes have not begun to pervade the atmosphere of the early dawn, this is the time to enjoy.
Well, we all should go around and watch Derek Nimmo get up if it's as funny as all that, shouldn't we? Anyway, Derek then was speaking when the whistle went, which, by the way, for those who don't know, tells us that 60 seconds is up, and whoever is speaking at that moment gains an extra point. On this occasion, it was Derek, who now is in the lead alongside Clement Freud at the end of the second round. Barbara Castle, your turn to begin. The subject that Ian Messett has chosen for you is Parties I Enjoy. Can you talk to us on that subject for 60 seconds, starting now?
Well, there are two parties I enjoy. One is a Labour one, and the other are the entertainments that I give at home. I always enjoy my own more than anybody else's, partly because my food is better, and also because I can control who I invite, and therefore I can keep out bores, and also allow my...
Kenneth Williams is challenged.
Well, she's been insulting about the guests she's invited. She said she can control her guests, which is a disgrace, because it infers her guests are uncontrollable, which is a disgrace.
Kenneth, you see, you can have a party, insult your guests, do what you like, as long as you don't deviate from the subject. Parties I enjoy. For some reason, Barbara Castle might enjoy having parties and then insulting some of her guests. And it's a very strange idea, but in this game, you've got to keep going, and whatever you say, providing it doesn't deviate from the subject, is legitimate. So, Barbara, the challenge is not accepted.
Thank you. I'm glad there's some justice in this situation.
Yes.
I wasn't talking about my guests, I was talking about the people I hadn't invited. As a matter of fact, I was making an oblique reference to you, but I...
So Barbara Castle has her first magnificent point. 39 seconds for Parties I Enjoy, Barbara, starting now.
I haven't much time for social activities, and so when I go out for a dinner or an informal occasion, I'm very anxious not to be sitting next to somebody who is talking shop, and one of the risks of being a politician is that everyone one finds oneself near to on these occasions is very much a
Kenneth Williams is challenged.
Well, I heard one... Well, is it one... Is oneself also one? No.
No, it was oneself. She said oneself and everyone. The one was there, but they're all three separate words. You were listening very well, and you were very keen. You're one of your keenest days, but you have managed to give Barbara Castle another point because it was an illegitimate challenge. It's a funny thing. Anyway, so I disagree.
How many seconds have I got left?
I'm just going to tell you, Barbara, you have 21 seconds for Parties I Enjoy, starting now.
So I find that they always, particularly when one is a minister, long to come along and talk to you about the job that they think they can do better than you can. And when one was Minister of Transport...
Clement Freud.
When I was Minister of Transport. One isn't. I mean, it should be I, shouldn't it?
Clement, yes, but why did you challenge Clement?
Well, I realise she's been a lot of ministers, but she said it twice.
You did actually repeat minister, yes. You repeated minister more than once. So this time I must agree with the challenge. Clement gains a point, and 4 seconds left for Parties I Enjoy, starting now.
And the one that gives me most pleasure is at 59 West Heath Road, Northwest Street.
That time, Clement Freud was speaking when the whistle went, so he gains that extra point.
And he was waffling when the whistle went, more like
So he's now in the lead, and Derek Nimmo's in second place. And Barbara Castle's now in third place, and Kenneth Williams is in fourth place. Kenneth, it's your turn to begin. Kenneth, the subject is chance. He's gone all miserable. Can you talk to us about chance? 60 seconds, starting now.
Well, of course, Shakespeare uses this word quite beautifully when he says...
Barbara Castle has challenged you.
Hesitation. We could have had... Shakespeare could have written a sonnet between his words saying...
Barbara, I agree with your challenge. You gain a point, and there are 54 seconds for chance, starting now.
Well, the whole of my life has been dominated by strange opportunities. As a matter of fact, I wouldn't have been married at the present time if it hadn't been that Ted Castle happened to be a newspaper man.
Clement Freud challenge.
I didn't finish the word.
My slow reflex.
Your slow reflex tells you
Happened.
Happened, yes.
No, I didn't. I took it back. I swallowed it. I said H-A and made...
All right, then, I will finally... Barbara is a guest, and she's the first time she's done battle with these three horrible men. So I'm going to put it to you. If you agree with Clement's challenge, will you cheer? And if you disagree, will you boo? And will you all do it together now? Boo. Barbara Barbara Castle, you have a loyal following.
I've always been a firm believer in British democracy. I thank you for reaffirming my faith in it here.
Barbara, you have 38 seconds for chance, starting now.
The man who was to make me his wife was sitting at his...
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
Repetition of wife. He's already made his wife before.
Yes.
No, he hasn't. He married her
Most
before. He
ungallant.
never made me his wife before. He married me before. He didn't make me his wife, and I thought that...
It's all right, Barbara, I'm on your side here, it's all right. Barbara, you have 34 seconds to keep with the subject of chance, starting now.
And a big the Labour Party conference was going on, and one of his reporters came back from the conference, and he said, "There's a red-haired girl."
Clement Freud, why
yes.
do you challenge? Oh, yes.
Repetition of conference.
A conference,
Yes,
He
I'll
went to
give you
conference
that.
in
I'm a reasonable woman.
Yes. So, Clement, this time you gain a point, and you take up the subject of chance, and there are 27 seconds left, starting now.
The most incredible chance I had was at the Liberal Party conference in Blackpool 2.5 years ago, when I left the chamber to sleep, perchance to dream.
Clement, why have you challenged?
Repetition, Shakespeare, the quotation that I was about to make.
Because you haven't made it yet, all that happens is Clement gets another point, and there are 11 seconds for chance, starting now.
3 little pigs went up into a mountain, and thereby hangs a tale, which is that none of them, not a single...
Barbara Castle, why have you challenged?
Mad deviation.
Why?
Well, it's no accident that pigs go up a mountain. They do
Chance,
it all
it's
the
pure
time.
chance.
Pure chance about what?
I don't think it's
Something
chance.
like
No, it's not chance. If a pig goes up a mountain, it might be quite deliberately because he can sniff out some truffles up there or something.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Quite right, well, how
Barbara
right
Castle,
that
you
is.
have a point and you have 2 seconds left for chance, starting now. Clement Freud is
I
challenged.
was buzzing myself.
She's quite right. She buzzed herself.
Buzzed herself.
Give her a point.
So Barbara Castle bubs herself.
Hesitation.
Why were you
Quite
challenging yourself, Barbara?
Because they didn't give me a chance to start.
A wonderful... I agree with the challenge, so she gains another point. And you have 1 second for chance, Barbara, starting now.
Who is that red-haired girl, he said?
They sometimes say chance would be a fine thing, and...
I don't seem to have said anything for ages.
You've just spoken now.
Yes, well, I mean, I'm out of it, really. You know what I mean?
Out of it?
I'm
You were
not
so
the-
in it at the present moment, you stopped the whole show.
Who's got the marks?
Who's got the marks? Well, Kenneth, you're at a definite 4th place, a very solid 4th place.
Fourth place means I'm losing.
Yes. Derek's in 3rd place, just behind Barbara Castle, who's behind our leader, who is still Clement Freud. Clement, your turn to begin. The subject is plastics. Clement, can you talk to us about plastics for 60 seconds, starting now?
This is the plural of the word plastic, which in common usage means a bomb thrown preferably anywhere. And
Kenneth Williams has challenged you. Why?
I also would like to know why it didn't buzz.
Well, press your buzzer harder.
challenge.
Well, your buzzer's gone off, but your light's still coming on. So you got in with a challenge. Why did you challenge?
Deviation, the definition of plastics is not bomb.
The definition of plastics,
He said-
I agree. No, I quite agree with you, Kenneth. That is not the definition of plastics. So you take a point and you have 50 seconds. What do you want to say, Clement? You look shocked. Oh, that's all right. Just act it. 50 seconds for plastics.
Ceased to be shocked by your decisions about 4 years ago.
Well, shut your mouth then and let's get on.
50 seconds for you, Kenneth, on plastics, starting now.
When Mrs. Corden entertained her friends, she flung open the front door and said, "Every piece of timber has been removed from my house, and we have substituted deep plastic. The banisters were made of this substance, so were the walls, and so was the ceiling. Up the..."
Derek Nimmo, you challenged why?
Deviation, because he has deviated from his original statement when he said that every piece of furniture had been removed from the house and been substituted by plastic.
I didn't know. It's every piece of wood, not furniture. Wood, dear. Listen.
Well,
Gotta wash
well-
your blooming ears out. That's what you
I think he did say wood, Derek, and not furniture. So Kenneth has another point, and there are 20... Kenneth, control yourself. 28 seconds for plastic, starting now.
And she said, moreover, I was given in the communal ward of Lawn Road Hospital top-class penicillin in plastic containers, which of course is ludicrous, as everyone knows they're in metal containers, but she was suffering.
Clement Freud challenged.
Repetition of containers.
That is quite right. You said containers more than once.
Oh, well, so what if I did? It was nice.
So, Clement takes over the subject of plastics, and there are 12 seconds left, starting now.
Laminated draining boards and washing up buckets are just one of the range of plastics to be found in a chemist shop on the outskirts of Kessingland. I encountered a woman...
Well, Clement Freud was speaking then when the whistle went, so he got an extra point and has increased his lead at the end of that round. Barbara Castle's in second place, Derek in third, and Kenneth is creeping up just a little. Barbara, your turn to begin. The subject is being misunderstood. Can you talk to us about being misunderstood for 60 seconds, starting now?
That has been my fate throughout the whole of my life. When I meet people in the street, they say to me, "I've seen you on the box." And the first thing they say,
Derek Nimmer, you challenge one. Hesitation. Yes, I'm afraid we must allow that one. Derek, you have a point, and you have 47 seconds for being misunderstood, starting now.
At the Electric Theatre Dumfries in 1943, by popular acclaim, I was elected misunderstood. And then a great crowd...
Kenneth Williams has challenged you. Why?
Because it's advertising.
What is he advertising, particularly besides himself?
With himself, that's enough, isn't it? It's against the BBC Charter. You're not allowed to advertise. It's
Kenneth, when you...
Lord Reith laid it down, I was there at the time. He laid it down.
We know how old you are, but Kenneth, what do you think you're doing half the time in Just a Minute? If you're not advertising Kenneth Williams, I don't know what you are advertising. And anyway, we've often had this point out, he hasn't deviated from being misunderstood. So, Derek, you get another point. 40 seconds left, starting now.
I do find it a great sadness in life being so misunderstood, particularly on a programme like this when Kenneth Williams so heartlessly, continually interrupts me. I try to start on a little tiny subject and do my very best with it, and try to the best of my tiny ability.
Clement Freud is challenged.
Repetition of best.
Yes, that's a bit tough, but I quite agree. He said
quite
it before.
right. No, quite right. No, he's absolutely
so,
right.
So, Clement, you get another point.
Rules.
And there are 26 seconds left for being misunderstood, starting now.
I am very seldom misunderstood because I speak clearly.
Derek Nimmer, why have you challenged?
I just like to agree with him.
Well, all that happens is he gets another point because... and there are 24 seconds left for being misunderstood, starting now.
Basically, because I enunciate and don't mumble or use...
Kenneth, why have you challenged?
That is flagrant rubbish. We all know he mumbles the whole time. His enunciation's rotten. Everyone agrees. People have been saying for years, get him to speak up. Get him to speak up. We can't hear what he's saying. He's a mumbler. He's a born mumbler, known as a mumbler.
I'm sorry. I
disagree with the at times backstage. What's he saying half the time?
I was talking to somebody else about you, actually, Kenneth. I disagree with the challenge. There are 19 seconds left for being misunderstood, Clement, starting now.
But by far the best way of being misunderstood is to speak very clearly like this, because now...
Barbara Castle, your challenge, right?
Inaudibility. How can we tell whether it's inaudible?
So, quite right, a valid point.
And
So you're challenging for deviation?
Yes, certainly.
Of course,
certainly.
yes, because he was talking about being misunderstood, and he then was misunderstood, and I imagine that must be devious, especially Barbara Castle challenges. So there are 14 seconds for you, Barbara, of being misunderstood, starting now.
Well, I'm always misunderstood physically. People say to me, well, when I've seen you on the box, I've always thought you were very small.
Clement Freud, why have you challenged?
It's the next repetition of box. Do you remember?
No, that was the other time. Yes, you can't clue that in this time.
No, actually, to be very fair, you did start off by saying at the beginning...
You don't start again, huh?
No.
Well, I'd like to know these fellows.
Quite right.
She
Yes,
just totally weighted against women. They're all anti-feminist, such trouble. I knew it before I came on the programme. I just had to take one look at them. I knew they were women haters to a man. I could tell you. They get me coming here under false pretenses. They make up rules. What do you think they were
Yes.
doing at the back of
They
that screen?
mumble as well,
saying,
don't they?
Yes, they were saying, why don't we think up a new rule? We never told her about horses. So did the Mason win. That's right.
So that's thoroughly out there. You never knew about that, did you? Of
course I never knew about that,
Of course, well then we can't allow. She gets another point for that, yes.
Thank you very much.
8
Thank you
seconds.
very much. You're not a woman hater. As a matter of fact,
I
I think
love
you're rather
women,
nice
yes,
looking,
yes,
as a matter
yes,
of fact. I
yes.
think you're rather sweet. Yes, thank you.
That's his wife, Dan.
My children as well. Anyway,
I've got my husband at the back of the room.
Yeah, so we're getting very personal now. I mean, if all the listeners want to switch off and Barbara and I just get together for a few moments, I mean... Right, Barbara, you have 8 seconds to continue on being misunderstood, starting now. Barbara, so you've challenged yourself yet again! So what is your challenge this time?
Well, my challenge is that obviously by just being here, I am misunderstood, so I've completed my minute by just being here and sitting here because I am misunderstood just by being here.
Yes, but you were supposed to have done that in your 8 seconds, darling.
Well,
Well, we'll give her another chance. Give her another chance on 8 seconds. I can't give her too many points for challenging herself. It'd become unhappy, but they're all of them, wouldn't it? There are 6 seconds now for being misunderstood, Barbara. Please don't challenge yourself again, starting now.
I'm also...
Derek Nimmer's challenge you.
Well, if her husband's standing at the back of the room, she can't be misunderstood.
Give Derek Nimmo a bonus point for a clever challenge, but as Barbara wasn't deviating from the subject on the card, she keeps it with 5 seconds left, starting now.
So I am misrepresented by everybody who doesn't like me, and there are lots of people who don't like me.
Well, Barbara Castle, on that occasion, was speaking when the whistle went, so she gains that extra point. She also gained quite a lot of points in that round and did very well. So I must give you the final score. Kenneth, in spite of all the vociferousness of his performance, came in 4th place. He didn't hit many points this week. And Derek Nimmo was in 3rd place, 3 or 4 points behind Barbara Castle, who, for the first time on the programme, I think did marvellously well to come with only 3 points of this week's winner, Clement Freud. Thank you in the auditorium here for coming along and joining us, and thank you, listeners, for tuning in to us. And from all of us here, goodbye.
The chairman of Just a Minute was Nicholas Parsons. The programme was devised by Ian Messiter and produced by David Hatch. We present Kenneth Williams, Derek Nimmo, Clement Freud in Just a Minute. And as the minute waltz fades away, here to tell you about it is our chairman, Nicholas Parsons.
Thank you very much indeed, and welcome once again to Just a Minute. Well, as this is the last programme in the present series, we are going to do something a little different. We have not invited a lady guest to challenge our 3 regular male competitors, and they are going to just play the game against each other. And let us begin the show this week with Clement Freud. Clement, a lovely subject for you to begin with. The subject is Kenneth Williams. Clement, can you talk about Kenneth Williams for 60 seconds, starting now?
Of all the ebullient, runcible colossi that I know, Kenneth Williams is the most colossus of them all. He bestrides this earth more like a narrow man than a silver-haired 45-year-old actor currently sitting on my right-hand side and my left hand. So.
Derek Nimmo, you challenge.
Hand repetition and also hesitation.
Yes, he knew what had happened, and therefore, Derek, I agree with your challenge. So you gain a point, and you take over the subject of Kenneth Williams. Oh, what it is funny when Kenneth challenges. Yes, 39 seconds left, starting now.
It has been my great privilege to know this splendid human being for at least 3 years, and during the whole of that time, I've not heard him utter one malicious word about anybody.
Clement Freud, why have you challenged?
Deviation.
Why?
It's untrue.
I quite agree, but I wanted to hear what your actual basis of deviation
Well, you're
was.
saying Kenneth is malicious, are you?
Ah, you see, that's why you said it, to try and get me to say something. I've heard Kenneth utter malicious words,
Whoever
but
said
not
malicious?
with malicious intent. So therefore, Clement's challenge is therefore true within the context of the game.
Very true, and you're a very good chairman. I like that. It's very clever.
There are 25 seconds left for Kenneth Williams Clement, starting now.
The endearing thing about this lovable chap is that he has today purchased a pair of shoes in a sale, which he says were reduced from 6 guineas to £3 because the colour had gone from burgundy to light pink. No other person...
Derek Nemo has challenged. Why?
Deviation, as the audience will judge, they're brown, not
Yes.
pink.
I must point out to the listeners, by the way, that this is a true story, because Kenneth did tell us this, and he's wearing the shoes, and we can all see now they're not a light pink. So I agree with Derek's challenge, and Derek, you take over the subject of Kenneth Williams. 7 seconds left, starting now.
One of the fascinating things about this man is that he was born in the same year.
That whistle, by the way, tells us...
They're still crippling me.
tells us that 60 seconds is up, and whoever is speaking at that moment gains an extra point. On this occasion, it was Derek Nimmo, so he has a commanding lead of 3 at the end of that round. Clement Freud has 1, so his lead is only 2, of course. Kenneth has yet to score because he couldn't bring himself to talk about himself. Derek Nimmo, your turn to begin. And the subject for you to start with this week is Clement Freud. Can you talk about Clement Freud for 60 seconds, starting now?
Clement Freud is a rather balding, boring, elderly gastronome with 5 children, 3 houses within the British Isles, and a flat on top of the Bunny Club. What he does there has not been revealed to man nor beast. He writes for the Financial Times. He makes vast sums of money in things like the Daily Mail, air race by very devious means indeed, which I'd like to tell you about, but he might sue me for all sorts of nasty things afterwards. He owns racehorses and restaurants, and he's far too successful, so I am very jealous of him, in fact, altogether. But sometimes, on a moonlit night in Venice, a different Clement Freud emerges.
Kenneth and his wife, you challenge.
Deviation on moonlit night is just the same.
And you are obviously speaking from experience, Kenneth.
You're not fit.
But on the other hand, whether he's the same or not, he's not actually deviating from the subject of Clement Freud. So Derek gets another point, because I disagree with the challenge. And there are 17 seconds left, starting now.
He has a grandfather who is always been trying.
Clement Freud of challenge. Why?
Deviation.
Why?
I have 2 grandfathers.
Well, if you've 2 grandfathers, no doubt about the fact you must have 1.
Oh, that's good. You are...
Don't shake your head. How can you have 2 grandfathers but no 1? Derek has another point, and there are 15 seconds left for Clement Freud, starting now.
I was once standing in a hostelry with this fellow when a young man came alongside with his elderly grey-haired mother on his arm. He said, "Would you like to meet the lady who gave birth to me?" And he said, "No." And the poor man went away.
Well, Derek Nimmo was again speaking when the whistle went, gains the extra point. In fact, he's gained a number of points in that round, and he very cleverly not only started with the subject, but finished with it in spite of interruptions. Kenneth Williams, your turn to begin.
Oh, thank
and the
goodness.
subject for you is, you've guessed, Derek Nimmo. So, someone's challenged already. Derek, why
I'd
do you
just like to say it's a very well-chosen subject.
We appreciate your modesty,
Thank
Derek,
you, thank you.
which the others didn't display. Kenneth, the subject is Derek Nimmo. Talk about him if you can for 60 seconds, starting now.
It was long ago remarked by an ancient divine that all the public know about a man is his reputation. And he added, as to his character, God alone can know that. But I have testimony to this man's...
Clement Freud, you've challenged. Why?
I didn't hear the S by the time I
No,
told
but you were very keen because you thought someone else might get into
Oh,
challenge.
so keen, he's
If you
overreached
challenge
himself.
So, Kenneth, you have a point, and you have 43 seconds left, starting now.
And on one notable occasion, of which I have private knowledge, this gentleman was a guest in someone else's house and behaved most nobly when the hostess fell back on opening the oven door, overcome, it was alleged, by the fumes, but by the other guests maintained that she
Clement
was
Freud
drunk.
is challenged. Why?
Repetition of guests.
That's right, you did say
Oh,
yes.
I don't care. It's a damn good story. It's ludicrously
Actually, Kenneth, I often think your stories are very good, but you're making this one very, very solemn.
Oh, well, I was leading up to it.
I don't think of Derek as a solemn fellow somehow. So, Clement, I agree with your challenge, and you have 13 and a half seconds for Derek Nimmo, starting now.
Derek Nimmo lives rather humbly in a flat.
Kenneth Williams' wife, you challenge.
Completely untrue. He's never been humble in his life. He's an arrogant man, I know.
The audience seem to think I should give Kenneth a bonus point for a malicious remark. So give it to him. Clement keeps the subject. 10 seconds left for Derek Nimmo, starting now.
I should like to qualify that remark.
Kenneth Williams, you challenged again.
Deviation, he wouldn't like to qualify. He just wants to qualify. He doesn't like doing it at all.
But whether he likes to do it or wants to do it, he's still not deviating from Derek Nimmo. So he gains another point, and he carries on for 8 seconds with Derek Nimmo, starting now.
By stating that the manner of his habitation is only modest for one of his arrogance. Anyone...
Kenneth Williams, you're challenged.
Deviation, the manner of his habitation. Doesn't make him sense, does it? I mean, a habitation can't have a manner. Your way of life can, but your habitation is presumably a
Well,
house.
it's
How
a
can house have
rather
manner?
flowery and prosy way of expressing something, but, you know, one has to use strange expressions in this to keep going. So, Clement, you have 2 seconds left for Derek Nimmo, starting now.
He has a wife and children.
So the subject of Kenneth Williams took Derek Nimmo into the lead, and the subject of Derek Nimmo took Clement Freud into the lead, but alongside Derek Nimmo at the end of that round. And Derek, it's your turn to begin. My funny bone. Can you talk about my funny bone? 60 seconds, starting now.
One of my metatarsals is terribly funny, and sometimes my friends look at it and say, "Oh, my goodness, how ludicrous is your funny bone?" And I say, "Can I have a look at yours?" And when I do, I find they always agree with me that mine is much more humorous than theirs. I have shown it in all the places of this country. Once walking through Leicester Square, I said to a man, "Would you like to see my funny bone?" And he said, "Of course I would." And we went into a doorway, and there he looked at it, and he was enchanted with it. And he said, "Could I please take a photograph so I can send it home to my wife?" There he took a quick snap of my funny bone, which he mounted on a piece of green card and sent it back to Melbourne in Australia. And there it was published in the local newspaper, and people came from all over the place to buy copies because this was the funniest bone that had ever been seen. I remember
Well, Derek's funny bone was not only funny, but extremely clever. The first one to keep going with a subject from start to finish without being interrupted for 60 seconds for quite some time. And by the way, he gains an extra bonus point for not being interrupted. Kenneth, it's your turn to begin. Joan of Arc. A very apt subject for you, I'm sure, Kenneth, but will you talk to us about it for 60 seconds, starting now?
Well, of course, the Archbishop of Reims is reputed, according to the memorabilia in the Louvre Museum, to have said to her, "You will stand alone. The Bastard of Orleans will disown you. The Dauphin will do the same." And she replied, "Even if you turn against me and I am burned I will go through the flames to the people's hearts forever. And then she said the word again. I can't. And so God be with me. And that's a very noble sentiment. And I once was in a restaurant with an actress who played the character of St. Joan. And in the bar, she was discussing the role. And the gentleman that was serving.
Clement Freud got in just before. What was it?
You can't get roles in bars.
You can't get one. You can't get what in bar, didn't you? Said
A role.
a role.
It's a joke.
Yes, you can get a role in a bar. I know. I didn't hear what he said, though. Roles, I know. So, it was a joke which didn't get much applause. Therefore, it was an illegitimate challenge. And Kenneth gets another point, and there are 2 seconds left for Joan of Arc, starting now.
Well, it's a shame I can't tell the story because I haven't got the time.
So, Kenneth started with the subject and finished with it, but though he didn't get the bonus point, he got the extra point because the challenge wasn't allowed. Do you want to finish the story, by the way, Kenneth?
It was Trevor McKenna who played St. Joan, and the waiter served her in the bar, and it was the same waiter that later served her with the meal, and she said to him, "Oh, are you doubling?" And he said, "No, Tipperary."
It's a nice story. Got a nice one. So there we are. I wish I could double your score, but I'm afraid I can't. So, because the others wouldn't like it. So, Kenneth, you're in 3rd place. Clements in 2nd place, still behind our leader, Derek Nimmo. Derek, now it is your turn, and the subject is getting into debt. 60 seconds for getting into debt, Derek, starting now.
One gets into debt if one is unable to make ends meet. And therefore, this is something which I find terribly difficult to talk about. Because if you...
Kenneth Williams, why have you challenged?
Deviation, he finds it difficult to talk about. Why don't you shut up?
But you see, in this game, even if you find something difficult to talk about, you've obviously got to keep going. So he wasn't deviating from the subject. So Derek gets another point, 50 seconds left, starting now.
I have a new house in the countryside which I'm going to christen tomorrow morning Debt. And it's going to be wonderfully funny going to get into debt.
Kenneth Williams, why have you challenged?
Repetition going 3 times.
Yes, you were going to the country and going. So, Kenneth, you get a point, and there are 43 seconds left, starting now.
Often the people of this country are harangued and exhorted by other people.
Clement Freud is challenged again.
Repetition of people.
No, they're clever.
So people gets Clement a point on this occasion. And there are 25 seconds for you, Clement, on getting into debt, starting now.
I find this very difficult to talk about, but getting into debt is invariably occasioned by having insufficient money or means which can raise loot of any kind, which Americans now refer to as bread, an unpleasant term, I think.
Kenneth Williams, why have you challenged?
Because the subject is getting into debt, not the colloquialisms used by Americans. They're not here to
He had
discuss it.
established he was talking about getting into debt.
He was going off about the Americans' way of defining getting into debt, which has nothing to do with the subject. It's
I
deviation.
maintain he was still on the
It's
subject.
deviation in any language. Now look here.
Now listen, now, Clement, listen. Derek, who are you? One over there. Yeah, feel over there. Listen, Kenneth, stop getting me going like that. You cannot talk about... I hope this show's going to be allowed to go
Get you out of
on.
your apathy.
Kenneth, you cannot possibly talk about getting into debt without discussing money.
But he wasn't discussing
Yes,
that.
he was discussing
Americans.
money, and he said the Americans refer to it as bread. 10 seconds with you, Clement, getting into debt, starting now.
An auctioneer in Belfast, to whom I entrusted several cases of wine, got into...
Kenneth Williams, why did you...
Deviation. We've gone from the Americans now to auctioneers in Dublin. It's nothing to do with getting into
I think
debt.
he was just about to say got him into debt. He actually said got.
Oh, you could be just about to be doing anything, couldn't you, in the game?
Not on this program. I must give, to be fair, because I do get letters about this, he really didn't have a chance to establish the connection between his remark about the...
Well, what do you think, Derek?
I agree with you, Ken. Totally.
Thank you.
Well, you'd always disagree with the chairman, any of you, if it was the other way. Now, all right, then, if you feel like that, I will put it to the audience. Do you feel? I must point out that I definitely don't think
That's the way to get them. You should stop saying that. If you didn't say what you thought, I'd occasionally get the cheers or boos, but every time you say, I personally
I'll try it
feel
the other
this.
way round.
Put it as a straight question.
Yes.
Oh, no, you must let me know.
Can't do
that-
this. And
no,
if you were in a law court, you couldn't say, this is what I want you to do. Please find him guilty.
The judge. I don't set myself
A
up as
man is innocent until he's proved guilty in
Yes,
this country.
but also, if we're going to have an argument. After all, I am not a judge. Shut up, the two of you. Now listen. If you think that Clement Freud was deviating, will you boo? And if you don't think he was deviating, will you cheer? And will you all do it together now? Clement Freud was not deviating, which is exactly what I thought. Thank you. And as we always play this game at Little Boys, I will now say to Derek Nimmo and to Kenneth Williams, sucks to you.
Interesting. When there's not
Let's
a-
get on with just a minute.
When there's not a lady on the show, it all comes out, doesn't it?
Yes, it certainly does. Talk about Freudian.
Steady on. Steady on. We've had quite a lot come out in this show. We don't anymore. 5 seconds left for you, Clement, with getting into debt starting now.
As a result of this perfidious
Yeah, that's not what
villainy
they said.
on the part
They
of the
agreed with
Northern
this
Irish wine merchant.
And at the
quite
end
right,
of that
David.
round,
Yes,
Clement
it's
gained
an
an extra point for speaking when the whistle went. He's now clept up. Oh, he's...
Slept up. What a joke, isn't it?
Oh,
He's got no
you're
diction even. He's got no diction.
Who would have at the end of 26 shows left with these three to battle with? There's only 1 against 3 up here, I can tell you. Clement Freud has crept up 1 point on... Even here, Messiter's fighting me. Pull the score away before I have a chance to read it. Let me say, he's crept up 1 point on Derek Nimmo, who's still in the lead.
The audience is all...
Sit down, Derek. Stop haranguing the audience. Once the sentence, you bring out a law of court of law before. Once the sentence has been passed, there's nothing else to be said.
Well, we're all
Sentence-
going to be executed. Gracious me, you're going to put a black cap on next year.
I think after some of the things you said, hung, drawn, and quartered would be better. I think it's about time to have the last subject, because we're running out of time. We're all going to get time at the end of this show. And the subject, which has been very aptly chosen to finish this particular round, and then we hope this series of Just a Minute, is saying goodbye. We've all shed a tear in the audience. Cheer up again. Let's get on with the game. Who's to speak? Whose turn is it? Kenneth Williams, it's your turn to go. Everything you say now. Kenneth Williams, 60 seconds for saying goodbye, starting now.
Parting is such sweet sorrow. Was, of course, written by our great bard, the Swan of Avon. It might have been...
Derek Nimmo, why have you challenged?
I thought there was a hesitation in there, but...
No, he was a bit quiet
Yeah,
and a bit
much.
mumbly, but he didn't actually hesitate. He was
Fine.
just teetering on it, and he keeps the subject 50 seconds left, saying goodbye, Kenneth, starting now.
Tears of farewell were spilled on me by Derek Nimmo on Waterloo Station when he said to me, here's your satchel. When you go back, don't forget me. Here's the books and the flowers and the chocolates. And I was heartbroken because I had to go to the provinces while he stayed here, showing himself
Clement
to
Freud
the
is
West
challenged.
End.
Why?
Hesitation.
No, I don't think he quite hesitated, so Kenneth has another point, and he's still saying goodbye. 25 seconds left, starting now.
I said, but for you, it's the lights and London. For me, it's oblivion. And he said, yes, it is. But you must...
Derek Nimmo, why have you challenged?
Deviation, I didn't say it.
Well, I can only take your word on that.
Please do.
Please do. All right. We have to take your word because I'm inclined to believe that you didn't say it. It didn't sound quite like you, I must say, Derek. 14 seconds left for saying goodbye, Derek. Starting now.
Well, I'd like to say goodbye to everybody in this audience today. To dear Clement Freud, lovely Kenny. To old Nick Parsons, who's not nearly as bad as he looks or is fainted.
Clement Freud, why have you challenged?
Deviation.
Why?
He is.
The audience are not now my friends anymore. They heartily applauded, and the only thing I can do is they applauded so loudly, I have to agree. Clement gets a point for a horrid challenge. The audience clapped. But Derek Nimmo keeps the subject, and there are 4.5 seconds left. Saying goodbye, Derek, starting now.
Well, ta-ra, what-ho, long may...
Clement Freud, why have you challenged?
He doesn't know.
He doesn't
I want
know.
to say goodbye.
There's 1 second left, and he wants to say goodbye.
I want to say goodbye.
And actually, will it make a difference to the final score if he does? It will make a difference to the final score if Clement says goodbye. Wouldn't it be a marvellous idea if they both finished up equal? And let Clement...
it wouldn't. I want to win.
He wants to...
This is not justice.
I'll tell you what we will do. There's 1 second to go, but before Derek has his final second, we'll let Clement Freud say goodbye.
Derek Nimmo, goodbye.
I've never had anybody
Kenneth
say so
Williams.
pathetic and get a big laughter from it. Perhaps some of us who try for laughs are playing it the wrong way. All right, Derek, there's 1 second left for saying goodbye, starting now.
Cheerio, Bruce,
Derek, before you...
Goodbye, wipe a tear, baby dear, from your eye.
There are some people who are listening still, we hope, who might like to hear what the final score is. And I think it's a very apt one. This is the last one in this present series, which makes us all very sad. And the three who've played it most regularly have come out very, very close. Kenneth was only just in third place, just 3 points behind Clement Freud, who was just behind this week's winner, who is Derek Nimmo.
What about a cheer for the man who never gets a clap? That wonderful man who chairs this show every week, Nicholas Parsons.
Thank you very much indeed, and I must tell the listeners that even Clement Freud clapped then. And so, anyway, they've all won at different times, and it was a final result. We'd like them all to finish equal. We've enjoyed playing the game so much, but thank you in the audience here for coming and enjoying our final show in this particular series. We thank the listeners. We do hope they've enjoyed this last show in our present series, and we hope they'll want to tune in again when once again Just a Minute returns to the air. Until that time, from all of us here who enjoy playing Just a Minute as much as we hope you enjoy listening to it. Goodbye.
The chairman of Just a Minute was Nicholas Parsons. The program was devised by Ian Messiter and produced by David Hatch.